I love the holidays, but shopping is always a daunting task. I was so excited when Skims announced its biggest holiday gift shop ever. This shop is going to make my holiday shopping so easy this year. The Skims Holiday Gift Shop has something for everyone. Sisters, moms, dads, boyfriends, best friends, even pets. Skims is creating the next generation of underwear, loungewear, and shapewear. I recently got Skims Soft Lounge Sleep Set in the Smoke Sparkle print, and let me tell you, they're so comfy. Super soft with tons of stretch. I think it's the most comfortable set I've ever worn to sleep. You've never been this cozy at home for the holidays. Collections are available in sizes extra small to 4X for women and unisex styles, and start at newborn sizing for children's styles. Skims makes holiday shopping so easy, with styles for everyone in the family. Skims Holiday Gift Shop is the destination for all of your gifting needs. Believe the hype. Skims has over 100,000 5-star reviews for a reason. Skims Holiday Gift Shop is now open at skims.com. Plus, get free shipping on orders over $75. After you place your order, be sure to let them know we sent you. Select podcast in the survey, and be sure to select our show in the drop-down menu that follows.
All I want for Christmas is romance in the pod. Romance in the pod with Paige, Mikey, and Todd. Gee, if I could only have romance in the pod, then I could wish you Merry Christmas.
Buy something nice for your mother, okay?
Thank you for tuning into Romancing the Pod. You had us at hello. I'm Paige Wesley.
I'm Mikey Randolph.
And I'm Todd Schlosser, and this week, Mikey made us watch
It's a Wonderful Life.
So I'm sure we've all seen this movie before. It's like one of those classics that everyone has seen. Do you remember the first time you've seen it? And Mikey, why did you pick it?
Okay, I picked it, and I don't remember the first time I saw it. I think my parents watched it.
I don't remember the first time I saw it either. It's like one of those movies I've always have seen.
Oh, I do. I saw it as a teen. I'll go into it.
It's not a child or a young person's Christmas movie.
No, it's not. I mean, because it's sort of a downer throughout a lot of it.
I don't think it's a downer. I think it's your perspective, but I do think its messaging is more nuanced, and they really go into details about some stuff that unnecessarily, like in the olden ways.
Yes, I mean, I would say that this movie has a lot of pacing problems that I have with a lot of movies from this time.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're getting your 5 cents worth when you're going to the theater back then. You know what I'm saying? Like, they needed the air conditioning. They're going for the full, 3 hours.
5 cents if you get a cushion.
Right. You know what I'm saying? Like, they made it a spectacle back then. You know, I haven't watched Gone with the Wind in a long time either. I wonder if that would hold up.
But this is like at a time when if a train shows up on camera, they're going to be freaked out it might come through the screen. People were just dumber back then.
I love the film's message. I think it's aged okay. There's stuff that of the time is not great, but I mean, I think it's aged pretty well. The message is definitely like anti-toxic masculinity. It's like, kindness is strength, and like there is value in that.
I would disagree with the toxic masculinity part, but sure.
Well, I don't know. I think what you're seeing is less kindness is a strength in so much that maybe socialism is better than unfettered capitalism. And that is a message I fully agree with. Yes.
I have fun facts about the movie's message about capitalism. But anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, well, there's that too. But I mean, it really kind of portrays suicide in a realistic manner of when a person starts believing that their death has more value than their life, that is a realistic thing, and that they're a burden to their family and to others in the town, and they're hopeless. Like, those are all huge risk factors, which it realistically portrays a man getting to that point.
Yeah, it shows literally the steps through his life that led him there.
Yeah. For the time being.
I agree, yeah.
And finding meaning is the opposite of suicide. It's like finding meaning and hope in your life. And it is hard to see the ripples of the good you do when he's a good guy, and there's stuff that's antiquated of the time of sexism and
sure.
stuff like that. But I think mostly it has aged well, and it has a good message. But it is long. I will say that. And then it's just because they're like, this is George Bailey. This is his whole life.
Yeah.
They could have kind of skimmed over some stuff. But I like the romance too. Mary loves him because he's a good guy.
I do like his relationship with Mary. I do think they are very cute together. I think he is annoying and she could do better, but fine. but he does love her, so great.
Paige, the movie shows she could have done better. She could have married a guy who got it on the ground floor of plastics.
Yes.
I don't know. I relate to a George Bailey who maybe is a good guy, but he's got big emotions, and sometimes he gets frustrated and yells at his whole family in the town. But then all of a sudden he gets called right back into work to go do the whole thing, and he doesn't make much money because he works at basically a nonprofit.
I do feel like Mikey overly connects to the main character. Yeah.
If you're going to take it this personally, we can't do this movie.
I mean, that's why I picked it, because I really connect with George Bailey. I think if it was made today, like not a remake, but like a modern take on this, their relationship, which I think is kind of center stage, would have a lot more nuance to it.
Their relationship takes place over only 20 minutes of this 2-hour film.
Well, you got to go through 2 hours of his childhood to get to the Clarence.
You fucking don't, by the way. This is another movie that implies that people are angels, and I also don't like
Yeah,
that.
I'm going to do an angel series, like Bonkers Time Travel Summer. I'm picking angel movies from now on.
I am kind of excited about City of Angels, even though I don't find Nicolas Cage attractive. You hooked me with the story.
We're going to do City of Angels. We're going to do The Adjustment Bureau. We're going to do...
I like The Adjustment Bureau, Mikey.
I do too.
I thought it was good.
I like City of... Yeah. We're going to go do some angel movies and see what we find.
We're going to do some research, listeners.
Yeah.
Like, we're going to figure it out. Yeah.
After Christmas, that's where we're headed, at least with my picks.
That's where you're headed. You have decided you're picking a theme.
We rotate, and people like Time Travel Summer.
I think you like Time Travel Summer.
I only do this podcast for fun.
Okay.
I just think it's a travesty that Mr. Potter came back from the future with the sports almanac. And like that.
He does, like, in appearance, look like an old Biff Tannen or whatever that guy's name was.
In
right?
the Depression, the stock market crash doesn't affect him. Think about it.
Because he was already rich. Like, what he does during the Depression is what
a lot of rich people did.
Are doing now, you sheeple.
That too.
Stand up, fight your landlords. Sorry.
Okay, but I also need a place to live, and we're not at a point where I can just fight the landlords.
You don't have $5,000, which is the price for the house that they were that George Bailey was giving a loan to.
Fucking love to find a house for $5,000. I'd buy 4.
I was like listening to the prices of George and talking to Mr. Martini, and I was like, $5,000. That's pretty good. I do love Gregory Peck as well.
That does sound pretty good, the $5,000 house. But if you adjust for inflation,
oh yes,
that isn't 1947. That was like 1935 when they,
right?
Because I looked into all this, right?
Okay.
So I wanted to get the adjustment right. What do you think $5,000 in 1935 would be worth today?
$5,000 in 1935. I'm gonna say $250,000.
Okay.
I'm gonna say more than that. I'm gonna say $350,000.
Okay, and that is the cost of a home in America in the like 1930s, probably closer to the 40s, maybe. That would actually be just over $100,000. It's $108,000.
The housing market is out of control.
Yes, it is. That's my whole point. Even if you adjust for inflation, our housing market is overinflated.
Is wild. That doesn't surprise me.
Me either.
Anyway, so Todd, so you don't remember the first time you saw this movie?
I know. I absolutely do not remember the first time I saw this movie. I remember watching it as a child. I was the youngest of my parents' initial set of children. Like the 4 kids that they had together, I'm the youngest of that group. So like we were watching these movies way before I even was forming memories in my brain. It's like in Silent Night, Deadly Night when he's fully a baby doing a voiceover.
Yeah, and he's like, and I remember when Santa killed my parents.
Right?
Yes.
But like I was watching the movie probably as a baby. So like I have no idea when the first time I saw it was. But I can recognize that it is a slow burn, depressing movie that I love through the lens of nostalgia. And there's also some really cool, like, for the time technical stuff that they did.
Absolutely.
That is, like, I think so great. But it is also, you just have to remember what they were using at the time to capture these moments. And it's insane to me that they did that. And that's sort of one of the reasons I love Seven Brides for Seven Brothers, even though it's like almost 20 years after this movie came out.
Right.
Like some of the shit they captured on a film camera on a Tuesday in July is like nuts to me. You know? So like I have a lot of that kind of love for this movie too, but this is not a movie I put in because I want to have a feel-good Christmas movie or whatever. That would be Claus. Or that would be Arthur
the
Christmas.
Santa Claus, like the original Santa Claus.
Sure,
is one of
yeah.
yeah.
But like, this is not one of my go-to feel-good Christmas movies, but it is a tradition movie. For Natalie and myself, we watch it at least once a year, and I think that is because our families would watch it at least once a year. So like, it doesn't necessarily feel like Christmas time unless we have watched or are planning to watch this movie, but this movie doesn't necessarily make me think of Christmas time, if that makes sense, because it is a little sad.
Yeah, so I saw this movie for the first time as a teenager because this was not one of our family Christmas movies. I have zero nostalgia for this movie. In fact, we watched it when I was a teenager because my dad was like, oh my God, we've never shown you this movie. It's super famous. And then we sat down as a family and watched it. And afterwards, my dad was like, I don't remember it being that depressing. We were like, yeah, why did we spend 2 hours doing this? And then I never watched it again.
Until today?
Until today,
Oh,
because I was like, hard pass.
I love it.
Hard pass.
I get that you don't like it, but you have to understand why many people do like it, right?
Not really, no. I mean, here's the thing I will say. I understand. It is beautifully filmed, especially if you watch it in black and white, which you absolutely should. That was how it was intended to be seen.
I watched it in color for the first time last night. When I watched it, I'm going to go back to watching it in black and white.
Absolutely, yeah.
The color version is fine. The nostalgia didn't hit as much for me because it wasn't the black and white version.
I specifically chose black and white today because I knew that it was filmed for black and white. And so that means that that's how it was intended to be seen, and it was lit for black and white. And this movie, from a cinematic standpoint, is lit amazingly. Like, I know that's a really weird note to be like, the lighting in this movie is beautiful, but it is, and it is well shot, and every performance is great. Like, there is nothing in this movie where people are doing their jobs badly. Let's put it that way. Like, that it's not a movie that people set out to make and did bad. That's not the case. They did well doing what they meant to do. I think you could cut an hour out of it and wouldn't miss
I felt
it.
the same way about White Christmas, that is also this long.
So that's the thing. White Christmas is my nostalgia movie. You could cut an hour out of it, though. 100%. I would admit that.
If you cut half the songs, you'd cut an hour out of that movie.
Which I would love. But then the film wouldn't make sense.
But then the film wouldn't make any sense.
Right.
Because it doesn't make sense. But here's my thing about White Christmas versus this. White Christmas, I am happy and Christmassy at the end.
Yeah.
This movie, I'm like, fuck, I gotta go look at my bank account. Like, this movie leaves me with the worst feeling. I've never felt Christmassy after it, but beautifully made. There is some fighting over the screenplay that I'll talk about in fun facts.
Really? Okay, cool.
Where there are a lot of cooks in the kitchen on this movie.
Oh, interesting.
And that's kind of why it ends up the way it
Kind
does.
of all over the place a little bit. Like
It's
the tone.
super all over the place.
It pulls it back out for like the end. Like everybody comes to town. They're like, you're the richest man in town.
Well, that's
blah, blah,
why
blah.
people only remember the last half hour of this movie.
Yeah.
Like, people remember the pool and the half hour, and because that's when Clarence comes.
I blame it on the fact that basically God and the other angel were like, get Clarence. I know he's a big fucking moron, but like...
I was like, why are we bringing the worst guy?
They should have brought in a wannabe angel that like already had a little bit of understanding about who George Bailey was.
That part is they're
Something.
like, Clarence is as dumb as a rock. And they're like, but he's like got the faith of a child. I'm like, that's also saying he's kind of dumb.
Dumb, yeah. Well, here's my frustrating thing of like cutting this movie and pacing, because it is paced horrendously.
Yeah, it's pretty bad.
Half of those cuts could just be shortening existing conversations.
Yes.
Like, the conversations in this movie are repetitive and go on for way too long. When he's talking to Clarence, by the way, Clarence is only in 15 minutes of this film. When he's talking to Clarence, they have 4 different conversations that are almost identical about how Clarence is an angel who doesn't have his wings yet. 4 of them. You could cut 3 of them. It's insane to me.
Well, George doesn't believe him, Paige. I watched the film.
That's fine, but have a different conversation about how he doesn't believe them. Don't have the same one 4 times.
I don't watch a ton of movies from the time, except for like the big ones, right? Like White Christmas, this. Those are the Christmas ones, but like...
Well, it's because a lot of movies from the time were musicals.
Right. Well,
that's
and
why
like,
you
know,
don't watch
like,
them.
what's the one? What's like the best, like one of the best films ever made?
Citizen Kane, which is
Citizen
debatable
Kane.
because that's also a boring slog that most people shouldn't have to sit through, but it is beautifully shot. I get it.
And it was revolutionary at the time, but who cares
At
now?
the time, yes, it is historically significant
Right.
and it is shot amazingly.
Casablanca. They're all very long. But I get it because, like Dickens is very long.
Here's the thing, long does not have to equal paced badly.
No, but like I think all movies in that time had a pacing problem up until like the 80s.
Not all of them.
Like a lot of 70s movies have a lot of pacing problems.
A lot
like
of
that.
70s movies do have pacing problems. Yeah.
There's no reason this movie needs to be 2 hours.
No.
You could have done a montage of like him growing up and cut half of the stuff of the montage and gotten the point that he's a good guy.
Yes.
100%. I would have loved more time with him and Mary.
Yeah.
Because they
Yes.
are more interesting than most of the movie. And their relationship is interesting. We don't really get to spend all that much time with them. We spend more time with kids that they then come back around and are like, and this kid grew up to go to war. I don't give a fuck. Cut that entire middle montage of where all of these ancillary characters that we've only seen for 2 minutes.
It's his brother. His brother went to war.
His brother is the only one we actually need.
Yes.
The rest of them I don't care about.
I don't care what happened to the cop and the taxi driver. I don't care. I'm like, I've seen these people on screen for 2 minutes. I have no investment.
If it was a modern day thing and they wanted to do this complexity and depth of this person's life, it would be like a 10-episode miniseries like The Wire. Like they have characters that come back like 2 seasons later like The Wire. I'm like, I don't know who went to Normandy.
I don't know. I don't know who these people are. This sounds terrible, but like Avengers Endgame does better with characters with less screen time than this movie does.
Yes.
Because at least I understand who they are. In this one, I'm like, I don't know who the fuck they're talking about.
Well, the costumes help.
The
If
costumes
everyone
do
had a
help.
really big flamboyant costume in this film, we wouldn't be having this conversation. And that would be an interesting...
Oh, right. The guy who's a tree.
He went to Normandy, Paige. He
went to
stormed the
Normandy.
beaches of Normandy.
And on VD Day, he cried and prayed. Yeah.
It's got that 50s like preachy stuff. It does feel like 2 different voices because I feel like Mary and his relationship is very nuanced and like different, modern almost.
Personable and modern and grounded in reality, I would say. And then there's other parts of the movies that are just bugfuck nuts, just like weird.
It's like the censors preaching at you like that. Like the whole World War II part is like a narrator and it makes no sense. And you never see George Bailey go to church to cry,
Never.
and pray. I'm like, why did they put all this in?
Because it was 2 years after the war ended. I mean, honestly,
Yes,
that is
yeah.
why. It is so close to the end of the war that people would have expected it. In fact, when this movie came out, it was put up against in the theaters another war movie that did way better than it did. Like,
What movie?
Midway.
well, we'll talk about it in box office. It's called The Best
Okay.
Years of Our Lives.
Oh.
But yeah,
right.
that's what everyone went to see instead of this. And it was a 3-hour, like, returning home from war movie. Like, I would imagine it was like that Tom Cruise movie that was terrible called Born on the 4th of July or whatever, but like the World War II version of that in the 40s.
I watched a similarly boring war movie yesterday, and so maybe I was boring war movied out by the time I got to this. I feel like I could have this movie without Clarence completely and just have it be him reflecting on the good things in his life, and I don't need this weirdness.
I think you need the Clarence, though, because that is the Dickens in this movie.
Yeah,
And I
sure.
feel like the Dickens is the hook. I know it's not like an actual, like, one-to-one, like, he is
No,
visited
I
by
know,
3 ghosts
yeah.
or whatever, but like the ability to see what like everyone's life would have been like without him in it is a very Dickens-esque magical realism kind of thing. And I think it makes the movie work. But like the last 20, 30 minutes are what you remember.
Yeah.
Because that's the good part of the movie. When it's not trying to be Dickens, it's not good.
Yeah.
I've only really started liking this film the last couple of years, really.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely do think it's like an old person's movie. So like as I get closer to old person, I do like it more and more, I think.
Yeah.
Maybe I am broken.
Paige, it's just because you look eternally youthful. So you're not allowed to like it. You're not old enough, Paige.
Yeah, you don't have the wisdom of the world right now. You don't have like an afternoon you can just sit for 4 hours and watch the film. This is the Hallmark movie before Hallmark movies.
But I also don't love Hallmark movies.
I know.
This is the movie you watch while you sit and wonder why your kids won't call and why that Cat Stevens song keeps playing all the time.
Yeah, I'm like, am I going to die alone and it's not going to mean anything? I'm like, no, I helped a bunch of people like this George guy.
Sure.
If I could see the world without me in it, it would have Biff Tannen in charge.
There you go. I am fully convinced that the reason I dislike this movie so much is because I have no nostalgia for it. Like, this was not a part of our Christmas tradition. And I think most people who watch and enjoy this movie, this represents time spent with their family and people they love.
Yes.
You should never make a child watch this film.
Oh, people do.
Yeah.
But like, I think that's part of why people love it is they're like, it represents the time, not necessarily the movie itself. So for me, I get that feeling from White Christmas where I'm like, it's not Christmas till I've watched White Christmas. I watched it the other day. It makes me happy. I usually bake cookies to it.
Oh.
This, I have none of that with it. And so it's like, I think this will
get that.
never be a loved movie for me.
Oh, yeah. And I think that's probably fair.
I was really interested today to rewatch it under like my work lens and be like, what does it say about suicide? And I was surprised that I didn't. There's definitely a lot worse movies out there that touch on the topic.
Smile is worse.
Yeah, absolutely.
Smile is way worse. Yeah.
Also, I love that Clarence was like, guy's suicidal. I'm taking a Mel Gibson approach. And he's like, you want to jump? I'm going to jump. And he just jumps right in that river.
Which to me says that George hadn't thought this plan out because that jump was very survivable.
I think the plan was
I think he was
drowning,
gonna drown.
not,
Yeah, I think he was
not
gonna
the jump
drown.
itself. Yeah.
It's really hard to drown yourself, though.
That's
That's like one of the hardest ways to go.
automatic like reflexes will take over in some
Yes.
situations.
I mean, he
yeah.
does jump in the river to save George. I mean, like,
You mean he jumps in to save Clarence? I mean,
Clarence.
yeah.
Clarence,
That's
yeah.
why Clarence jumps in because he knows that if he uses George Bailey's trauma of watching his brother almost die in front of him, falling into water, that he will kick into that savior mode and he'll be required to jump in and try and save him.
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And I show that clip of Mel Gibson. I'm like, don't do this. Like when I train people, I'm like, this is not what you want to do.
I mean, most of the things Mel Gibson does are things that you shouldn't do.
I mean, except for leave voicemails.
No,
Yeah, I like George Bailey, man. He's like, for the people, he's like the 99%, punches a ton of cops in this film.
He punches one. It's the same cop twice.
Well, I mean, it's a one cop town.
Yeah, it is a one cop town. It's just that one guy.
What does George Bailey tell a cop he's already told once?
Tells him again. You know what I'm saying?
Not that he's already got two black eyes. I don't know the joke.
I was going to say, I think you fucked that joke up.
What do you tell a cop with two black eyes? Nothing. George Bailey already told him twice.
That's what it is.
I had some conflicting feelings this watch because I was like, man, Pottersville looks cool as fuck.
Pottersville is almost entirely bars and strip clubs and dance
And
clubs.
casinos.
Pottersville or whatever is 1000% just Second and Broadway here in Nashville. Like that is downtown Nashville right now. I do love that like my conservative family loves this movie about a socialist standing up to a capitalist. And it is like my favorite part of the Christmas season. And it's so funny to me.
And his dad was like that.
Yeah.
And he's
Well,
like
because
that.
I think they interpret it as good people help people. And I'm
Yes.
like, yes, you're almost there.
Yeah, they interpret it like the Bible says. Yeah.
But
Yeah,
people
exactly.
some people used to be like that. They would be like, rich people used to build libraries, not monuments to their narcissism. You know what I'm saying? Well, they could have been monuments to their narcissism back then.
Yeah, I was going to say, to be fair, they were
could be
building
both
those
of those
libraries
things.
to distract from the fact that they were trying to unseat Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who died right before this movie was made. That's why they named characters after him, because this movie absolutely has an anti-capitalist sentiment,
Yeah.
Which I
and it was
like.
almost criminal at the time, and we will talk about it in fun facts.
Can't wait. All right, maybe we should just go through it scene by scene because there are a lot of scenes and there's a lot to get through.
We could skim, right?
I'm a yada 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 through a lot of
we're
shit.
definitely
yes.
gonna 1% this movie, like 1% milk it. You know what I'm saying? It's not the
Yeah.
full 2%. It's like the skimmer version, but not fully skim.
Right.
Well, you got the pharmacist poisoning the kid. You got your brother drowning. You got talking to Mary. You got high school George.
You got Violet. You got the school dance. We'll get through it.
There's
We'll
a
get through
whole
it.
bunch of shit.
Yeah.
Anyway, this movie, we do get old timey credits, and I do love the old timey credits. I know that there's nothing playing over them, but the stylized mid-century Christmas, you cannot beat it. It's so pretty. I love it. And they're not that long because it's an old movie.
Yeah.
Anyway, we're now in Bedford Falls, and we see Gower Drug, martinis. And then we go up into the sky and we just have stars lighting up and talking to each other as if they're
I think
angels.
you're talking about special effects.
For the time, yes. But also, this goes on for like 10 minutes. This
Yeah.
scene is bonkers long, and it is weird as shit.
Oh, you mean two constellations talking to another constellation about how dumb this wannabe angel is?
Oh, okay. Let's get the Mormonism out of this film, okay?
I do think it was very brave of Frank Capra, who made this movie, to definitively show that the Mormonism, everyone gets their own planet style of heaven, is what is
correct.
True. Yeah, that's a very big swing, especially in the 40s when Mormonism had only been around for just over 100 years and black people couldn't hold the priesthood or positions of authority for another 40 years after this. Actually, 25, 30 years after this.
I also love that they have disdain for their work of angels, like a 9-to-5 job. They're like, a lot of prayers coming in for George Bailey. We got to get somebody on it. Fuck it.
It is a very middle manager way to approach someone praying for help.
People were talking. We probably address it, or we're just gonna we're gonna lose some clients. Where's that guy? He's super dumb, but real faithful. He's a company man, Clarence.
We better send 2 guys in short sleeve button down shirts on bicycles to make sure everything's okay. Because every time a doorbell rings, an angel gets its wings.
Hello, my name is Elder Todd, and I would like to share with you this free, amazing book. That's from Book of Mormon, the musical.
It is a wild book.
Yo, you have not lived until you've lived the drama of Laman and Lemuel and the Nephites, dog. Come at me, bro.
Or if you just take the time to watch Under the Banner of Heaven, and that's almost as good.
It's so good.
Anyway, they do say that Clarence has the IQ of a rabbit and the simple faith of a child. And I'm like, does he need a helmet?
And he died of old age in the olden times. So I was like, can't be that dumb. He's got street smarts.
That's what it is.
Well, okay, but I also want you to think about, first of all, I do know when Clarence was born. I have it in fun facts. But I want you to think about someone who is so old they have died of old age, and then they're responsible for talking you out of killing yourself.
Well, you see, young whippersnapper, your life isn't as bad.
Wait, who are you? She stole where are my glasses? Yeah.
Clarence ain't like that. Clarence is like, I'm going in the water for you. Like, what, old man? He's like, bye.
Bye. What would have been really funny is if he had done Jason Statham high dive jump flips. That would have been awesome.
You will do anything to see Statham in a Speedo again, Paige.
Oh, all I have to do is pull up YouTube.
I know, Statham Olympic tryout video, slow-mo.
Yeah.
Bookmark. She's got a bookmark.
Robbed. Should have gotten that gold. Actually, not. I think he was probably only okay, but it's fun to watch. Anyway.
Okay, so these stars are basically the narrative frame of going through George's life. They're like, Clarence, here's the brief on George.
Yeah, here's the 411 on George.
Yeah.
So that bigger constellation is basically omnipotent, and they got to explain this shit like a child to Clarence.
Yeah. And they basically tell him, they're like, at 10:45 p.m., he's going to contemplate taking his life. And so Clarence is like, I've only got an hour to dress. And I'm like, what? What are we talking about?
Paige, they just said he had the mind of a child. What do
He
you
clearly
not understand?
does.
Whoa. I don't want to defend this, but I've definitely had to be like, I need to get dressed before I go out there. And you have to think about it's a process. You can't just go talk to somebody who's suicidal with your pajamas. You'll look weird.
He's an angel. He can disappear at any time.
He's got to put his human skin on. He's a star right now. It takes a minute.
Oh, God, I can't.
I honestly wish we got to see that process. I just would have loved to have seen 1947's version of someone who's a star putting skin on.
I'm just picturing him getting dressed with a shine bright, shine far, be a star. You're a star where you live.
I am picturing Charlie Day from the Dayman episode when he comes down.
The top
And
hat.
he's just wearing a bright yellow suit with a top hat. Yes.
I was that little star, that little
So
starry
Clarence
boy was me. Anyway, he also has been trying to win his wings for 200 years.
Yes.
And he's like, people are talking. And I was like, yeah, because you're clearly dumb. What's going on?
You know what they say in heaven? If you look around, 4 out of 5 angels have wings. So if you don't have wings, you're probably the dumb angel, Clarence. What's wrong with you?
They do say that all the time.
It's an idiom up here in heaven.
There's signs with that on it.
I would love an expanded universe of this. That's all I'm saying.
Oh, yeah, the It's a Wonderful Life expanded cinematic universe. That includes The Bishop's Wife, Arsenic and Old Lace, Psycho for some reason. Sorry.
Look at the only thing is like Samuel L. Jackson plays the large constellation. He's like, we got a fucking problem down there. I need you to join the Angel Initiative. After someone dies, he just like approaches them.
Bunch of angels on a helicarrier.
Uh-huh.
His constellation is an eclipse because it's got an eye patch over the sunny part. Hey, Nick Fury, how do we know which star is yours? Mine's the one that says sunny motherfucker on it.
Sunny motherfucker.
Let me tell you, we've got T-minus 2 hours to save George Bailey. Here's the briefing.
And then at the end, he just like shows, he drives up in a car, pops the trunk, and it glows, and that's how you know Clarence got his wings. Like it was just the loot in the back.
Suitcase. That's what was stolen in Pulp Fiction, which is in the It's a Wonderful Life expanded universe.
Holy shit.
I refuse. Stop it.
I love this.
Don't infect my good movie with this movie.
Get Quentin Tarantino's on the phone to confirm this.
No.
I bet he would be like, yeah, sure.
I bet he would.
I know, right? That dude will do anything for a headline.
There's like a 10% chance, Todd. He'd be like, you finally figured it out.
He shows up at our house unannounced.
I need you to not joke about that. He does not live far away from me.
Paige, keep your socks and shoes on at all times.
You need to put out a plate of foot-shaped cookies and some Lubriderm so he can give you a foot massage when he comes down your chimney on Feetmas Eve.
Feetmas Eve.
I hate that whole sentence. Keep that foot fetishy stuff out of my Wonderful Life episode.
Good tidings we feet to you and your feet. Good tidings for Feetmas and a happy shoe year.
I really do love that this movie is Nick Fury, more or less, from the It's a Wonderful Life cinematic universe, sending Clarence down to help George Bailey defeat capitalism.
Defeat capitalism. It was right there the whole time.
Greed is a sin.
Greed and avarice, yes.
Have you not seen Wall Street? Bro, greed is good.
Bad. It's like literally
that's right.
really
Reagan
bad.
was the fucking worst. That's right. My bad.
He was just the poster boy.
Yeah.
There was lots of people who influenced that all happening.
Oh, I know, but the whole greed is good thing that came out of, like, the movie Wall Street is what I was referencing there. Like, that came out of that time period.
Well, look at today. Elon Musk, a good example. Good does not equal wealth. And the more money you have does not make you a better person.
Is anybody debating that? Like,
Some
Yes.
people are.
oh my God.
Some people think being rich means that you're inherently good.
Yeah, the whole point
Really?
of life is to make money. The richer you are, the better person you are, the better you are.
I mean, from a very, like, zoomed out view, I sort of agree with that on some level. Like, I think it is your job to, like, provide for yourself and the ones you love and all that kind of stuff. So, like, I get that you should work and find purpose. Like,
Yes.
But the people who take it to the, well, he is obviously a man of God because he's rich, like, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard anyone say.
It's cuckoo bananas for sure.
It's
Yeah.
cuckoo banana.
I mean, but if you look at a man like Elon Musk and do no research, he seems somewhat accomplished. But then when you do your research, you realize that he is just like the son of a guy who benefited
Married
off
his
apartheid.
stepdaughter and had a couple
that came
kids with
later,
her.
but like they owned diamond and emerald mines in South Africa. Like so much so that Elon Musk would have diamond fights where he would throw diamonds at his siblings. Like that's the level of wealth they came from. And he's never held a real job in his life. Like the dude doesn't know what he's doing. But if you think he's a genius because he's rich, you're stupid.
And he will definitely have a big lurch-looking motherfucker to wheel his wheelchair around when he's older.
Yes, he will.
He is Mr. Potter. I like this movie because it really shows that some people who their whole life purpose is like rich, control, money, power, do not understand people who live for different values.
Yes.
In a fundamental, like, you're an idiot, you're weak, you're like the whole thing of his life is Potter being like, your family's stupid.
Well, also, and that brings me to something that I did notice about this film that I had never noticed before. None of the old people age. Like, some of those people should have been dead-ass dead by the time we get to the end of the movie.
I don't know if I should be the one to break this to you, but you don't really age either. Like, I don't know where you get off getting upset that people who should age don't in this movie.
I'm sure 20 years from now, I'll look 5 years older, okay? Like, we're not even seeing that.
Are you just like drinking the retinol? Like, how does it work? People need to know your secret, Paige.
I do moisturize and I eat a lot of dairy.
All right.
Also, Clarence does a pretty decent job pretty quickly. Like, he wraps that shit up in about 15 minutes at the end of the movie. He's like,
He stumble bumbles his way through it.
oh, come on. He's like, yeah, I'll just make the world like you never existed. Boom. And he wanders around. He's like, told you.
He slip and falls down that stairway to heaven. Like he lucks out. And by the way, in watching it, I was like, when he's having that initial conversation with George, he's like, why would you want to kill yourself? He's like, you're right. I need to figure this out. I love my family. And then he still continues to be like, no, we need to see what it was like if you were never born.
They sent an angel down. He's not just going to go have one conversation. He's like, you got to drive the point home. That's how you get your wings. You got to get results. You got to pump those numbers up.
Ridiculous.
I honestly want to see all the times they've sent Clarence in the past 200 years that he didn't get his wings. Like, that's the trilogy I want. Like, the Clarence fuck-up episodes. You know what I'm saying?
I think this was his first major task. I think they've been giving him maybe minor tasks.
They said that he's up again,
Yeah.
which means that like they have given him bigger jobs in the past. I think one of them is the Salem witch trials.
Well, you know what? I still like him better than Denzel because he didn't try to fuck Mary.
How dare you besmirch our national treasure, Denzel Washington? I will not stand for any anti-Denzel rhetoric on this show.
Oh, you mean Studley Dudley?
It's Dudley Dudley.
Dudley was a way worse angel than Clarence.
Dudley was trying to dick down Whitney Houston the whole movie. I mean, we don't have
And
to
you
get
know
in-
what? He would have been effective at it.
Yes, he would have been.
That's not why he was sent. The Constellation was very upset with him when he got back.
Yeah, he didn't get his wings that time.
Well, it's because that constellation's a Scorpio and we keep grudges.
It's like, we sent you there to save the church, not make his wife come.
You cannot tell me you think Denzel was a better angel in that movie than Clarence is.
Absolutely, I can. Yes.
No. He caused the traffic jam to try to hook up with his wife.
Clarence doesn't do anything. Clarence literally just follows him around. In fact, half the time, Clarence isn't even there because Clarence has been held back by a cop or tripped and fell somewhere. And it's just George running and realizing what has happened to all this stuff.
He made his move. He made the world look like he wasn't born. And he's got to let George stumble through it.
That brings me to a very important question I've been wanting to ask you, Mikey. How long into these like negotiations do you offer to show them what everyone's life would be like without them?
Immediately.
Okay.
So I go out there and I'm like, okay, you've never existed. Let's go walk around town.
Okay.
It takes a few hours because I've got to learn about their whole past.
Right.
And we've got to Shutter Island the whole thing.
I know.
It's a Shutter Island. It is a Shutter Island.
It is. It would be a Shutter Island. Yeah.
I'm like, we should pay all your loved ones to pretend you never exist and they live terrible lives. And then that would be a Shutter Island. And that, no one's ever done that before because of all of the obvious
many
logistical,
legal
ethical,
reasons.
and logistical problems with it. It also would be very expensive.
Honestly, I just don't think we're investing enough in our healthcare.
Do you know how much we'd have to raise taxes to pay for a Shutter Island for every person?
I think everybody should get one Shutter Island.
Everyone gets one free Shutter Island.
I'm running for office and I want to be like, Shutter Island for every person.
Mikey, you were talking about running for government earlier.
Uh-huh. I want to guarantee a Shutter Island for you and you and you. And they're going to be like, what is this guy talking about?
Anyway.
Why you got to play that piano? It's so stupid. I really relate to him.
Haven't you learned the damn song already? That's another thing. It's Jimmy Stewart who has a crazy voice and is also playing a high schooler at one point, but is clearly 40 some odd years old.
They do a decent job aging him up and down.
They do nothing. He looks the same the whole movie.
They do a fine job for the 40s, but he does look the same the whole movie, except for when he's like
the child version.
The child
yeah.
actor, right? Because it's definitely a different actor who then plays his son later in the movie, which I thought was funny.
Yeah, I noticed that. That was pretty funny.
I was like, I mean, why not? He probably would look a lot
He's
like his dad.
already here.
Yeah.
One of his kids is a clone like Boba Fett. What's wrong?
For the upcoming war with the Angel Initiative. Anyway, so the first kind of vignette he sees is kids sledding on shovels, which I have gone sledding and slid on ice, never on a shovel. I feel like it's a recipe for getting racked in the crotch by the handle of that shovel if you hit anything.
Well, this is the time of lawn darts and things of that. Like, this is...
Yeah.
Why can't all of our kids have children? Well...
I mean, this is at a time where you were thrilled if even most of your kids lived out of childhood.
That's why she has 4.
I know.
Yeah.
Anyway, so they're sledding on shovels. His brother slides and falls into the ice, and he saves him, but we find out that as a result, he loses his hearing in one ear.
Yeah, but he does save his brother's life.
Right.
And this is also the first time we see something that I have to talk about with this movie, and that is you put your fingers, like your thumbs, on your temples and wave your hands and go hee-haw, hee-haw.
Yeah, there's a lot of donkey in this.
There is a lot of
understand.
donkey in this.
I think it's like a reference to the show Hee Haw.
No, hee-haw is much later than this.
There's a kids show where they did that back in the day, I think.
I honestly don't know where it comes from. I just want to say we see Sam Wainwright as a kid do it here, and then the very last time you see Sam Wainwright on the screen, when he's probably in his 40s, he does it. If your friends do a bit that long, tell them to stop.
Anyway, but during these scenes, we're also meeting like Henry F. Potter, who's the richest man in town, and his dad, who works at the not the bank, but building and loan, which is, I want to say a credit union is like the closest I could come to it. It's like a credit union that is also a contractor, where it's like they specifically provide loans for homes and development. But they're not a traditional bank.
But it is like a credit union vibe, because it is like the people in the community invest in everyone else in the community kind of a thing.
Right. We cut to George goes to his job at the drugstore, and we see that his boss is like drinking and crying, which is never a good thing unless it's retail during the holidays. Then you just close the door and go back to your shift.
Retail pharmacists, they do a lot of drinking and crying.
Oh, for sure. I mean, retail anything, you do a lot of drinking and crying.
Think about it. You're a pharmacist. You went to like school.
Yeah.
Now you work 9 to 5 at Walgreens getting yelled at by people all day.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
At the time, I don't believe the schooling was as stringent at the time.
Oh, I'm sure it wasn't. I mean, it wasn't as stringent to be a doctor either. Like,
Yeah.
a lot of things progress and get more difficult to attain because maybe they should have been the whole time, right?
Yes.
And I mean, they definitely should have been, because this motherfucker almost kills somebody with the pills that he makes. We also find out why he's so sad, which is that his son died of COVID-18.
I thought his son died in World War I because this is occurring in 1919.
It said influenza, which is the last time we had a COVID-19 style
that would have been
outbreak.
1920.
Yeah.
1920. He's a compounding pharmacist specifically.
Yeah.
So he's like your pharmacist today. There are still compounding pharmacies today, obviously, but most of like your pharmacists at Walgreens or whatever are like allocating pills in certain amounts and then giving you directions on how to use them.
Yeah.
Compounding pharmacists are actually mixing what goes in them.
Yeah, they're like building the pills or whatever you call that.
It's good and bad. There's not a lot of oversight, but at the time it was kind of the only option. So, but the front of the house is like a soda fountain. So this is where we meet Violet and Mary for the first time. And Violet is like, I want these kind of candies. Will you help me down? Like, she's hitting on George from the jump. And then Mary's a little more subtle about it. And this conversation is bonkers, where she's like, I want chocolate, but I don't want any coconut. And he's like, why the hell wouldn't you want coconut? Don't you know that it comes all the way from Tahiti? And I was like, why would that motivate somebody to want coconut?
But he says it like an 8-year-old version of, why don't you want coconut, you dumb bitch? Like,
Yeah.
he doesn't say those words, but that is like very much his vibe.
Because coconut and chocolate is a good combination.
I don't like coconut either. It's a texture thing.
It comes from Tahiti!
You dumb bitch. I do love that he was like, whatever, this bitch is getting coconut. And he like gives her like 3 scoops of coconut.
Well, maybe if you wanted better employees, don't hire 8-year-olds.
Yeah, don't hire. Here's what I will say. First of all, Todd, you should try toasting the coconut. It changes the texture.
Oh, I
'Cause
would try
I'm a texture
that.
person too.
Yeah, okay.
Toasted coconut comes out a little more, almost like toasted breadcrumbs.
I do like toasted breadcrumbs. I mean, and I would absolutely try that because I don't hate the flavor. It's more the texture than anything.
Right.
Yeah.
Anyway, this is our first indication that he and Mary will have a thing, because she leans down into his ear that he can't hear out of, and she's like, I will love you forever. And he stands up and he's like, see, in this magazine, like he just completely did not hear her.
I love it when he sits back up with the ice cream in his hand, having not heard her confess his love, and he's just like gabbing away about National Geographic and how
About
he's been
fucking
inducted
coconut.
into the explorer groups or whatever they call them.
Yeah.
It's clear that this kid wants to travel because his town is very small and there's not much to do.
Right.
Yeah.
He does see the telegram that Mr. Gower's son died, and he goes back there to be like, hey, is there anything I can do for you? I know you're having a hard day. And he tells him to take these pills to one of the other families in town that has diphtheria.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, George realizes that because Mr. Gower is drunk, he has given them the wrong pills, which means that he might accidentally poison them.
I mean, it is poison.
Yeah, it is poison. So he sees a sign that says, when in doubt, ask dad. So he goes to ask his dad. And this is the first time he runs into Potter and the bank examiner. And we kind of find out that his dad is a very principled man, and that does not necessarily translate to wise decisions in business. But it does translate to him doing as much good as he can when he can.
Yeah, because he's doing whatever he can for his fellow man, not his own bank account.
Correct. So George ends up going back to the pharmacy where they're like, hey, where is that medicine? And he's like, he should have delivered it an hour ago. And then we watch him literally violently slap this child.
Until blood comes out of his quote unquote sore ear.
Yeah.
It made me so sad. And while he's doing this, like George Bailey as a kid is like, I know why you're sad and hitting me. And he's like being so empathetic to this old man who is physically accosting him.
Yes.
I mean, honestly, it turns into this, like, I hesitate to say sweet moment because I do feel like this moment sort of bonds them.
Yeah, because he covers for him.
Yeah, I don't feel like the pharmacist is a bad guy necessarily. I get that the beating a kid thing was of the time, I guess.
It's still
But,
not
like,
great.
it's
Especially
terrible, yeah.
an open hand slap across the face. Like, you're an adult to a child.
Yeah.
Like, you hit hard enough, you'll knock some eyeballs out of a guy's head. Like, it's
Yeah.
not good.
But like at the end of this, like literally 2 seconds after he's hitting him, they're hugging and he's like apologizing and he's crying. It is just like the guy's going through a lot. His son just died. Like I get it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It does not excuse beating your child
Exactly.
employee, your child slave laborer guy you
Yeah,
have over there.
employee, by the way. Like, not even your own child, a child that you have hired. Like, call OSHA.
Well, no, Paige, his own child is dead.
I know.
Wow, you had to throw that in his face.
It also wouldn't be okay if it was your own child, but add to this fact that this is workplace harassment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But he gets a nice suitcase out of it.
He does get a nice suitcase out of it, which is exactly the very next scene where we cut to what is supposed to be like a 20-year-old Jimmy Stewart, who is very clearly like a 40-year-old man.
He's like Bedford Falls. He's lived a long life. He's had to have the business on his shoulders.
Yeah. People died young then. Like he was middle-aged when he was 25.
Well, because this movie ends with him at 28, by the way.
Wow. Okay.
When I realized that, I was like, what?
That is nuts.
Yeah. Anyway, so the pharmacist has purchased a giant overnight bag for him so that he can go take a trip and see the world.
It's almost like a traveling trunk. It's like a big suitcase.
Right.
versus
Like
the
if you needed to
volcano.
float away from a volcano on it, it would be perfect.
It's a little bit smaller than that, but it's like embroidered with his name and he paid for it. It's a very nice, thoughtful gift because he's going to cross to Europe working on like a cattle boat or something like that to travel before college.
Well, because George Bailey tries to travel like 6 different times in this movie, and at every point, life is slapping him down. I'm
Yes.
just saying. It's pretty depressing. So we cut to, he goes to visit at the pharmacy and thanks him. And he does that thing where it's like I think it's a cigarette lighter. He's like, I wish for $1 million. Hot dog.
Hot
And
dog.
it's
Yeah.
hot dog. But now that kind of soda fountain and pharmacy is incredibly popular. There's a ton of kids there. So clearly he's become more successful over time.
Yeah.
But he leaves and he's about to take a taxi home when he runs into Violet, who is like, hello, mutual, I'm sure. Just, violeting her way across the street.
But Violet's the girl who, from the first time we see her as a small girl, like she's talking about how she likes George, and then Mary, who's sitting next to her, is like, you like all the boys. And she goes, yeah, what's wrong with that?
Yeah, duh.
Like that is very much her vibe as an adult as well.
I'm a sex positive straight lady. What's wrong with
Yeah,
it?
in like the 20s or whatever. She was just a lady about town and here for it.
Yeah, what's really great is later on when she ends up starring in Chicago. She's basically that character. So
My favorite part about her is when he's like, let's go do this date that like sounds also terrible to me. And
yeah, it's a lot.
and she's like, no, I am
Nope.
no longer interested in you for the rest of the movie.
Let's put our feet in the grass and feel
I
the
was down
earth.
for the feet in the grass part, and then
It
the
was the
hiking.
10-mile
I was like,
hike up a mountain.
I
Yeah.
think he added that because she had not bugged out yet.
maybe. I do like that before she walks over to talk to him, she's with 2 different guys, and she's like, hold on, I might be back.
Yeah.
and he says, I'll wait for you, baby. I was like, oh, Violet is a vibe. She is a whole vibe.
Violet is running that town while like Mary is falling in love with one man. She is like convincing the town to fall in love with her.
Yeah. I don't know whose baby it is. I guess you'll all have to give me thousands of dollars. Like that's Violet's next move. It's great. Anyway, so we cut to George Bailey's house where his mom and dad are getting ready for dinner, and George and his brother, Harry Bailey, yes, are running around upstairs, and it's like shaking the roof and everything. And this is the part of the movie that does not hold up, is having a live-in servant of color in the home.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, people were still okay with that? Not cool.
They were okay with it till like the 60s.
Yeah, but she walks out, and her first line of the movie is, "This is why all children should be girls." And I was like, what a crazy worldview. Like, that is bonkers. But, like, tell me more.
Yeah.
Like, I want to hear about your plan
lady.
for this. Tell me information.
Yes.
Anyway, so the more I thought about it, I was like, only children though? What is it? Anyway, so the boys come downstairs, and by boys, I mean full-grown adults.
Right.
And they sit down to have dinner. Harry's taking a bunch of plates to a party that we'll find out about later. George is sitting with his dad, and he and his dad have this conversation of like, I want to go, I want to see the world. It's not that I don't love you or what you do. I just have different aspirations for my life. I do think you're a good man, and I appreciate what you've done.
Yeah. It's a pretty sweet moment, actually. And I do love that the like live-in housekeeper lady is like eavesdropping from the kitchen and like eavesdropping like right in front of them. And he's like, if you want to sit down, you could just sit down or whatever.
Well, and I love that she's like, I would if you were saying anything good.
Yeah. And then scampers back to the kitchen. But you see her like listening in, right?
Yeah.
And then once they say like, I love you too, or whatever, she's like, it's about time y'all said it. She's great.
Here's the thing, though. That conversation in a Today movie would be 2 minutes long, but just as impactful.
Yeah.
This is one of the ones that I'm like, I understand the sentiment. I want to keep the scene, but I would trim the hell out of it.
Yeah.
So, I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway, so he decides he's going to go to the party.
Well, it's the high school dance thing. Yeah.
The high school dance.
Yeah.
All of the high schoolers are 40. Like, every single one of them.
I do think that's funny because they literally have to be the townspeople later in the movie. So they're just like,
do.
all right.
Yeah, it's the same people.
And I also think it's weird that like a lot of non-high school men show up
Yes.
to this high school dance.
Yeah, that tells you how much times have probably changed, huh?
The fact that there's just like 23-year-olds rolling up being like, so who's the young ladies that are free to dance?
Right?
In this movie is
Yeah, you definitely
wild.
shouldn't run for senator for Alabama.
Or you should, because that's what all the senators are doing.
Well, no, that happened.
Roy Moore.
Wait.
Like, Roy Moore was at this high school party.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
That literally
That's right.
happened. He lost because of it, actually.
Good.
He's like, everybody's doing it back then, right? See?
No, they
People
weren't.
did a lot of things back in the day that weren't great. Like, that's not a good reason for anything. Saying like, oh, well, people did it back in the day. No, people did slavery back in the day. People burned women at the stake for no good reason back in the day. Just because they did something back in the day is no reason to continue doing it ever.
Agree.
Yeah.
Which is why I don't care when people are like, in the Constitution, I'm like, it was a living document to be updated.
Exactly.
Controversial, I guess.
Yeah.
Anyway, so this is where he meets Mary through her brother, but clearly they are not too far apart in age because they knew each other as kids, and he was not that much older than her, it seemed. And she's at college around the same time he would have been at college.
Yeah.
So and he was only a year or two off. So I think they're maybe 3 to 4 years apart max or whatever. But he meets Mary. She's beautiful because every time she's on screen in this movie, the lighting is chef's choice.
Yeah, I mean, it's Donna Reed, too. Like, she was like a bombshell back in the day.
Right. Oh, she was gorgeous.
Mm-hmm.
But my favorite part about it is that, like, and this is why I'm like, watch this movie for the lighting, because the lighting's amazing. You'll see the lighting for the scene, and then it cuts to her, and it's completely different lighting, but it's just to make her look beautiful.
And she does.
Worth it. Her skin, immaculate.
Is she drinking retinol? Like, what's her secret?
She's just eating mozzarella sticks like me. Probably not. She probably had an eating disorder because things were bad at the time in Hollywood.
Yeah.
Most likely. Many of those women were bullied into eating disorders, and it was very sad. Anyway, he's like immediately taken with her. She's talking to another guy who, by the way,
He looks so familiar,
He does
right?
look familiar.
I know why he looks familiar, and I looked all over the internet to try and verify this, and I could not verify it. I'm about 99% sure that actor is the actor that they use in the picture in White Christmas as Freckleface Haynes, the dog face boy.
Oh my God. Could that be true?
I think it's the same guy, because I was like, where have I seen this guy before? And I was like, Freckleface Haynes, the dog face boy, because I watched White Christmas like 2 days ago.
I'm looking at that picture. It looks, Paige, just like the dude.
Yeah.
My favorite character is the other dude you never see again who's like, hey, man, I see you're mad. I've got the key to this dance floor.
Yeah.
Some people would fuck shit up. I'm going to leave this key here. I got to go.
Oh, wait.
Wait, it's Alfalfa.
It is Alfalfa.
Oh, wow. No wonder he looked familiar.
He is Freddie Ortho.
I found it.
It's
Yes.
a Wonderful Life. He is.
Freddie Othello. It is the same guy.
He is the same guy.
Oh, I feel vindicated.
That's
great.
amazing.
Eagle Eye Wesley over here. So anyway, Freckleface Haynes, the dog face boy, gets the key from the guy, and he's going to open the pool just like in Whatever It Takes, which, by the way, if you remember from when we did that movie, it is the same pool.
And it's a reference to this, right? Like,
yes, absolutely.
It has to be.
But it's where he's just, I'll stop the world and melt with you. And like people are falling in. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, not only a reference, the same exact pool.
Nice.
So they're dancing, but eventually they fall into the pool, and everyone jumps in the pool because nobody has smartphones in their pockets. So
I love the guy who's like running the event or whatever, and he's like on the side, like, no, don't jump in. And then he's just like, whatever, fuck it, I'll jump in. And then he jumps in. It is like adorably funny to me. And I love when old dudes like play like that. It's so fun to see.
very, very fun. We cut to them walking home after, and it is implied that they took clothes from the Lost and Found to come home in.
Well, because he's wearing like football
a football
pants
uniform
that have like pads built in, but don't fit because he's like holding it with his hand, and he has like a football jersey on, and she's wearing just like a bathrobe, more or less, and that's it.
Right. And he keeps stepping on the tie.
Because she should tie it. What happens is on her completely.
She was dressed like she deserved it.
No, she should have tied the thing. Like, everyone knows you tied the bathrobe.
Sure.
Unless you're looking for hanky-panky business.
Todd, this is an aggressively bad take. But here's my other one. They're singing Buffalo Gals Won't You Come Out Tonight, and it's terrible.
Even the captions say singing out of tune, and I was like, damn.
Yeah.
Even people who can't hear know.
The library is open, apparently.
Yeah.
Oh, that's how I sing.
We know, but like
We
sometimes
know.
it's how I sing. Like, no one's perfect all the time.
So he says, if it wasn't me talking, I'd say you're the prettiest girl in town, which is a weird way to be like, I wouldn't say that, but I guess other people would.
The first step is to neg.
Well, but then my favorite is she's like, well, what would you say? And he's like, wait a second, how old are you? And I was like,
Good question. George Bailey's a good guy. He's a good guy.
Yeah.
But then she's like, I'm 18. She's like, why? Is that too young or too old? And I was like, the fact that 18 could be too old.
Is a different time. She was an old maid librarian at the fresh old age of 25.
Yeah, exactly.
She was, yeah. When she should be going downtown to 2nd Broadway to find herself a husband.
Or just a friend for the night. It is her choice, Todd.
Yeah, whatever she wants. I don't give a shit. I'm not going down to 2nd Broadway. Are you kidding?
Just like she reads about in her library books.
Oh, man.
Anyway.
Yeah.
They have this kind of like fun, flirtatious. They clearly have chemistry. They like each other. It's very, very cute.
The whole, you want the moon, I'll lasso the moon and pull it down for you. Like, the whole thing is super sweet. I love it.
Romantic moment.
It is very romantic.
That reminds me of, there are a lot of scenes in this section that remind me of The Notebook, you know, the famous murder-suicide film.
Yeah.
Where she's like, call me a bird, you're a bird, like that kind of thing. And then the whole like, I love that old house, let's have sex in it, and then let's make it our house, which is also something that happens in The Notebook.
Well, you know that like they probably did have sex in that house tonight, but that was not in the film.
Absolutely.
They absolutely don't have sex that night, guys. He gets rushed away because his dad dies. You monster.
Yeah, but then he comes
Afterwards.
back
Yeah,
and has
yeah,
like
yeah.
super sad.
Oh, I was saying, you're okay if like her brother is murdered by a car or whatever, and then she hooks up with the car. I mean, the guy that murdered him. That's okay in a
when
film.
did this happen? Hold on.
This is West Side Story.
No one gets killed with a car in West Side Story. They get
he
shot
gets
because it's a
stabbed.
race war.
He gets stabbed by her boyfriend who comes
I
to
know.
her house and they hook up.
They do.
Yeah.
Because it's Romeo and Juliet.
Yeah.
So he came back after his dad died, and she's like, he died of a stroke. I need a stroke.
You know what, Todd? I'm siding with Mikey on this one.
They don't show Clarence that because he has a mind of a child.
They had to edit some of George Bailey's life just because, Clarence has the mind of a child.
Every time we say mind of a child, I think of that Gremlins 2 Key and Peele sketch where it's like, a vegetable gremlin? You mean just a gremlin made out of vegetables? You are a child. You have the mind of a child. You just said a noun and gremlin. Let's just watch Gremlins 2 again, guys.
Think about there's not a lot of entertainment options.
Sure.
TV cuts off at like 6 o'clock or whatever.
Yeah, uh-huh.
You're going to end up boning.
Oh, I was going to say charades, but sure, okay.
Charades can only get so far before they turn sexual.
2 words, 2 syllables. Let's
Your
fuck.
dick, my mouth. Yeah.
Kids, go to bed!
Anyway, she says she wants to live in that old house. He says if you break windows in the old house by throwing a rock, you get to make a wish. So he throws one, she throws one, she won't tell him her wish. And then he steps on the tie as they kind of go to like run away.
Yeah.
And she runs right out of her robe.
We don't see that. We just cut to him where like the robe is on the ground and his foot is on the thing. And he's like,
Yeah.
huh.
Well, I guess actually also before that happens, they throw the rocks. He does the I'll give you the moon thing.
Yeah.
And he's like, and then I give it to you and make you swallow it. And then your fingertips would be moonbeams. And I was like, who the fuck wrote that?
I mean, it's accurate. It's accurate to the weird shit you tell your partner, but you don't want anyone to see or hear.
It's accurate to shit you say at Burning Man to someone who you think is going to be your partner that you met that night.
Right.
Now you say weird stuff. Like you take a romantic moment and then they're like, but then you eat the moon. And then all the moonbeams come out of you and you're like, all right, that's enough. We get like
You're already inside me. Do we have to do this?
Anyway, but this is where one of the neighbors leans out and is like, kiss her already. Fuck. Like, what are you doing?
because there's no TV after 7. He's just sitting outside staring at the earth like, please entertain me.
He's sitting outside reading the newspaper.
Whatever, Todd.
I know. I think it's crazy that at night he's outside reading the paper. Mm-hmm. But I love that he says, youth is wasted on the young. He just goes inside all mad. I was like, I love that
well,
line.
if you're not going to fuck on the sidewalk, then I'll just go inside and masturbate alone. Yeah. I thought you guys were going to go over and fuck in that old house and I can see right through it through all the broken windows. But if you're not gonna, then fine.
Yeah, he's the guy who started that you got to break the windows out like myth because he wanted like to watch people having sex from his house in that house.
Well, that's like later on when they're in the house and he's like, what more could I wish for? And I was like, probably more windows. Like, probably not to have broken so many windows.
Yeah.
Anyway, so he steps on her robe. She ends up naked in the bush. And he kind of like, oh, maybe I won't give you your robe.
I love his performance of this because it's so silly. He like even says, "This is a very interesting situation I'm in." Like,
a man doesn't end up in this situation every day.
I love that he is like, I think he's really struggling with what to do. Like, does he give it back or does he make her come out and then put it on her, right?
Right.
I thought it was very funny. Although we don't get to see any of that because she's like, give me my robe back, give me my robe back. And he's like messing with her. And that's when the car rushes up and pulls him away because his dad had a stroke.
Right. So he tosses the robe at her. He gets in the car.
Yeah.
We cut to 3 months later where he's at a board meeting for his dad's business where Potter is one of the board members in the business at that point.
Yes. That predates George Bailey taking it over.
Anyway, so Peter is essentially Potter's like, we should just close the business because your dad was a terrible businessman and he kept being fucking charitable and ew. And here are some copies for Ayn Rand for everybody. And so then
I don't think Ayn Rand was out yet. I might be wrong about that though.
I'm gonna find out.
When was Fountainhead published?
Atlas Shrugged is 57. Fountainhead is 43.
Yeah, okay, so Ayn Rand would have been a thing at this time. And this is like when she was like pretending to live her philosophy, right? Not like what she actually did later in life when she was like living off the government and stuff, but like when she was actually trying to live that libertarian lifestyle.
Yep. Anyway, so George Bailey is just like, you motherfucker. Just like, how my father was a good man. Just, you know.
I mean, he does deliver like a monologue in Potter's
Yes.
face. It's so long that like people would be yawning if that was in real life. Like, it's such a long monologue.
Well, it's like, have you ever seen Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, which another Jimmy Stewart film, where he filibusters at the end and he's like, and also the people. And you're just like, God damn, do you need an inhaler or something?
That's why they got rid of the filibuster.
Well, unfortunately, they didn't get rid of the filibuster. They got rid of the requirement to actually talk the whole time you're doing a filibuster, which has ruined the filibuster.
Yes, it has. Anyway, so he gives this whole monologue of basically like, my father cared about people and invested in his community, which means that even though he died poor, he died richer than you will ever be, which I do think is kind of the point of the movie and is a great, piece to highlight. It is a very good monologue. Great. We find out that the board outvotes Potter, but on the condition that George stays.
Yeah.
And he's like, damn it, why do I have to be so good?
Why do I have to be so fucking good at public speaking? Yes.
But he was like about to go to college, right?
No, he's going to start traveling overseas before college.
No. He's already missed his trip to travel overseas in the 3 months that they've been settling up the paperwork. He was about to go to college. He misses college as well.
Yeah.
So he takes his father's place.
Super big brother energy.
Oh, yeah. And his brother has heavy younger sibling energy because essentially he gives his college money to his younger brother.
Yes.
Who then goes to college, on the assumption that he will then come back and take over the business so George can go and travel and do the things he wants to do. What does he do? No, marries some random lady, takes another job, and is just like, sorry, not sorry, George. Younger sibling. Bye-bye. So we cut to, they have like a huge party for Harry's wedding and kind of his homecoming and his wedding all wrapped in one. And everyone's kind of getting drunk. George ends up getting kind of drunk that night. And so does his uncle. This is where he kind of points his uncle in the right direction down the sidewalk. And he walks into trash cans and it's just like, I'm fine. This is where George's mom is like, you should go talk to Mary. And he's like, well, I think she's kind of with that guy from New York. And she's like, fuck that guy. He's not here. Bye. Like,
how far away are they from New York? Where is this set? I know it's Bedford Falls, but like,
I don't think they specifically say. In my mind, I thought it was upstate New York.
Me too. So like New York isn't that far away.
It was very snowy, but I don't know what the world was like before global warming.
Well, and if we look at like the cars that are there and like, it probably would be like a train ride or whatever, but everyone seems to be going to New York for like an overnight.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like a long drive, I guess is my only point.
Yeah.
It's upstate New York.
Okay.
But I do love how like I guess it's George Bailey's mom at this point because it's them talking out in front of their house, right?
Yeah.
And she's like, man, Mary don't want to fuck that dude. He's always putting his fingers on his head and saying hee-haw. Ain't nobody wanting to have sex with that.
I mean, she could have been rich, but whatever.
He was rich.
I mean, he wasn't rich yet. Like, there's no way for Mary to have known that he was going to strike it big in plastics.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, he's like, there's this new thing called plastic. It's going to be huge. You're like, okay, guy.
You make it out of soybeans? Whatever. You nerd.
So he kind of goes for a walk. He runs into Violet first. And this is where he's like, what if we took our shoes off and walked through the fields and stared at the moon? Just the ravings of a crazy person. And she's like, yeah, I think that's you. Have fun with just yourself. But by the time that he's like done describing it, there's like a crowd laughing at him.
Again, because literally, there's no TV past 6 o'clock at this time in the world. So like they're just out and about trying to see shit like this going down in town.
Right.
And she does turn him down pretty spectacularly in this scene.
Yep. So he then wanders to Mary's house and she's just like, so are you coming in or not? Because your mom said you were coming over. And he was just like, I don't know, because he's still definitely drunk. And like, this is not a good, he should have waited probably till the next day, I would say.
No, you got to do something now. Do it now. His mom called first.
What happens between him and Mary sort of breaks my heart in this scene. Like the way she like had been clearly building up for this moment. Like she has been thinking about this her entire time at school because she was at college, right?
She was at college and she had come home a couple times, but I don't think she had seen him.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem like, or maybe had only seen him in passing or whatever.
But she's playing Buffalo Gals Wants to Come Out Tonight on the record player.
She has
and like
a picture of him lassoing the moon.
It's so
she drew
cute.
A picture. It's
cute. And he is just like an asshole to her.
Well, he's drunk. Like, I don't think he's like not really remembering because she's like, this night is burned into her memory. And he's just like, oh, right, that song, I guess. Like, I don't.
It's clear because of how the movie sets it up, but she's been in love with him her whole life, right?
Yes,
so it
absolutely.
makes sense that she would have built the Buffalo Gal night,
right?
You know, where they had fallen in the pool. She had built that way up bigger in her mind than he had because Mary's just his friend's kid sister, I think.
No, I think he has feelings for her. But
yeah,
I think he
develops them on that Buffalo night.
He does not want to get involved because he won't be able to go live his life or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Sam calls from New York and they're talking, and we cut away to Sam and see that there's another girl there, which I think is to make us feel less bad about what's about to happen.
That girl is all over him too. Like she is hanging on
Absolutely.
him. And I think it is the same girl that he ends up with later. Like,
I think
'cause
so, too.
I think it's the same girl that he goes to Florida with.
Yes.
Towards the end of the movie or whatever. So like Sam's fine. He found his Mary or whatever.
Right,
Yeah. I
whatever.
don't feel bad for Sam.
So Sam is like, one word for you, plastics. And they're like, what? And George is like, well, there's an old factory that you could buy for super cheap. And he's like, perfect. Put all of your money in our stock or whatever. And as they're on the phone, they're getting closer and closer and closer. So it seems like they're going to it's kind of romantic because they're up close listening. And he just drops the phone and he's like, I don't want any plastics. I don't want to marry anybody. And then he just like aggressively kisses around her face.
Yes.
In front of her mom.
I love a good weird ass emotional outburst.
It is so funny because Paige, during the phone call, you're right. Their bodies are like pressed against each other. It's like
Electricity.
Yeah.
they are on top of each other. And then he just like throws the phone to the ground and like pins her up against the wall and is like, you're right. It's not like kissing her.
No, he kisses around her face. And I
Yeah.
have facts and fun facts as to why.
Is it because he spontaneously went blind and couldn't find her lips? Like,
No, there's a huge section of that kiss that is cut out by the censors.
There's a lot of weird cuts when they're together.
Yes.
And it does look like it's like edited out because like the
Yeah.
night in the abandoned house, same thing. It was like, I think he went in for it and they're like, no, you can't do that.
Yeah, because there is a cut there. And it is censors is why, because censorship was very different at the time.
damn, I wonder if there was like an X-rated version of this.
I mean, it's a wonderful petite more. Anyway, so it's in front of her mom who goes running up the stairs and is like,
And she's like
kissing.
scandalized or whatever.
We cut to they have gotten married and Violet is her bitchy bridesmaid who has like upstaged her with her dress that day, which I thought was very funny.
Violet goes to this wedding very much with the energy of, oh, I guess we both wore white. That's weird.
Well, this is a thing of back in the day, especially at this time, especially around wartime, you didn't necessarily always buy a wedding dress. Some people still did, but not necessarily. Some people just put on their best clothes and got married.
Yeah, this is before capitalistic wedding culture.
That is true because that becomes a huge thing in the 50s. Yeah.
I've read stories of paratroopers bringing their parachutes home because their wives or girlfriends wanted to make wedding dresses out of it.
Of course. Yeah.
And of course, those were white for the most part, I'd imagine. So like, I don't know. I thought that was a cool story from this time.
My grandmother got married in 1949.
Okay, would have been after the war.
And she has a full wedding dress. And so does my great aunt who gets married around just a few years later. But before that, a lot of times you'll see people married in kind of these like suit dresses, which are kind of cool. But so she's just wearing her nicest dress.
I've seen some of those from this time, like in movies of this time.
Yeah.
They are pretty cool, actually.
Yeah, they're kind of unique looking.
I don't know, Paige. I'm probably using this term incorrectly, so if I am, correct me.
Sure.
They're very like pantsuit, but like sexy feminist mid-century like pantsuits. And it like works. Not like Hillary Clinton pantsuit. Like Doris Day pantsuit. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, Katharine Hepburn pants.
Yes. It's sexy too, man. Like I'm here for it. Ooh, look at that thing with the pants.
They get in the back seat of a cab and they're making out, and it's this one cab driver because there's one cab in this town.
He's the whole town's like transportation.
It's like in Wedding Singer where they have the one limo driver in town.
It's Oscar from The Office. I love.
Yes.
Wait, no, that's not what.
You're thinking of the
Proposal.
Proposal?
I'm thinking
Yes.
The Proposal. Yeah. But he serves the same function as that guy from The Wedding Singer.
Exactly.
He's like we need a guy to do this. Well, let's just have that guy do it.
Right.
Yeah.
And he's got champagne for them, which is very sweet. From the cop, by the way. And I was like, open container laws, but apparently, whatever.
They didn't exist. You could technically DUI until like the 80s.
Yeah. So as they're driving, they pass a crowd of people at the bank, as well as they pass the savings and loan. Now, this is after, or at least kind of in the middle of the Great Depression, but it's after 1929 because the high school dance was in 1928. So this is like 1933, give or take. And so he gets out of the car to see what's going on and notices that the banks are closed, which is something that like, it definitely happened in 1929 for the Great Depression, but people don't realize that it happened for years after that as well. And that it was kind of like a wave of unsecured funds in banks no longer being available and people just losing all of their money.
Yeah.
The banks have closed. He opens and talks to his uncle. And I don't know why his uncle has like a pet crow and a pet squirrel through the rest of this movie.
His uncle is weird.
But his uncle has like a menagerie of animals. Like he's a Disney princess getting ready in the morning. Like it's so strange.
Squirrel, blackbird, all sorts.
He's got a
of stuff.
crow. Yeah, it's weird.
He also has string tied around his fingers to help him
remember
stuff, which
things.
how does that even work? Like it's just a
That
string.
was a thing back in the day.
I know, but how do you know what you're trying to remember?
Unless you have like tags on it for like what you're trying to remember.
They're like little toe tags with like what you're supposed to do. That's why they were called Palm Pilots, because the tag would hang on your palm. And there you go. Hello.
I'm just picturing the tags are like grocery, do laundry, and then one is just like Ethel, 1928, 2005. Like just one of them is like, oh shit, go to the morgue.
Oh man, this string was don't lose $8,000.
Shit. But he basically says, oh, and at one point while they're making out in the back of the cab, he like barks at her. That was a little strange for me, but whatever. So he basically, the uncle says that the banks called in all their loans that morning and he gave them all the cash they had.
Yeah.
Because the banks are trying to cover as much as they can. So they called in all their loans. And so now they have no cash to give people. They probably will within 60 days, but nobody is willing to wait that 60 days.
Yeah.
People need money right now and the banks are closed. So Potter calls and is like, hey, I have enough money to basically secure the entire town at 50 cents to the dollar. So like, I'll pay you half so you have money now, but it means you didn't lose your money. Which, by the way, they wouldn't have necessarily lost their money, at least at the building and loan, if they'd been able to wait the 60 days.
60 days, yeah.
Yeah.
Right. And so he says, no, you know what? I'm going to pay these people out. And they pay essentially their wedding honeymoon fund, like the entire thing of money they have for their trip, which the idea that $2,000 could keep a bank afloat for a day is madness.
And you said this was 1933, right?
Yeah, it's about 1933, I think.
So $2,000 in 1933 to today's dollars, that would be about almost $46,000. So like maybe I bet the bank that's even close to me, and I'm like in the suburbs of Nashville, goes through way more than $45,000 in a day.
I would imagine so. Yeah. Or at least has to have that much money on hand.
Yeah.
Because if everyone pulled all their money out, there's no way.
You kidding me? It's next to a Taco Bell. There's definitely going to be a run on the Taco Bell.
For the border, if you will.
So they end up paying everyone out everything. They end up with $2 at the end of the day.
I love their little wedding ceremony they have, and like you better get in that safe and start breeding if you want us to survive. That was very funny.
But Mary calls and is like, just come home to 320 Sycamore. And this is that house that is basically an old broken down house. And they're putting posters over the windows of the places they were going to visit. And then they're definitely going to bump uglies in this house, presumably for the second time, if Mikey and I are to be believed.
Mm-hmm. As we should.
I mean, it's at least the first time. It's their wedding night, right? And as we all know from our youth, true love waits. If it was me, though, I would be choose the right, because that's like the Mormon version of it. But yeah.
True love waits till you find the right dilapidated house.
Yeah.
With just enough splinters. we cut to, this is where she says, this is what I wished for. And I was like, you should have wished for more windows. But
you got to hold out, man. You could do better.
We cut from here to a very stereotypical, borderline racist depiction of Italians. Now, this movie is made by Frank Capra, who is Italian, and his last name Capra means goat, which is part of why they have a goat in the car. But also, there are multiple times in this movie where people like throw shade at George Bailey for lending money and building houses for Italians, which is like, that's how you know this movie is old, is they're like, Italians, right?
Because it's racist towards a subsect of white people.
Subsect of white people?
Yeah. That's how old this movie is.
Man, yeah.
If it was older, it would be the Irish.
It would. You're
Technically,
right.
It could have also been the Irish right around the same time.
Yeah. What you're describing, Mikey, is far and away which is far and away a better love story than this.
I actually don't know if that's true because I've not watched that film in many, many, many years.
I know we've talked about doing it before, and it's not
We're going to do it.
It's not my pick for next week, but I definitely think we should visit Gangs of New York, the prequel, which is far and away.
I think Far and
Gangs of
Away
New
is
York
better
is
than
terrible.
Better than Gangs of New York.
I don't know, Bill. I think
I'm
we have to do
pretty
both.
sure.
And we'll figure it out. Actually, I don't know if Gangs of New York is not a rom.
It's not a love
Gangs
story.
of New York is not a love story. Anyway, so they transport this giant Italian family with a goat and like 15 children to their new home that they helped them build. And we cut to a few years later where now they have like a development of homes and it's called Bailey Park. So it's kind of like he built a subdivision. And they are kind of welcoming them to their house with, bread so you never go hungry, salt so life always has flavor, and wine so you always have joy and mirth and whatever.
Yeah, it actually is kind of sweet. Like, it's a very nice thing for them to do.
Yeah, it's a nice tradition.
Yeah, it's sweet. Even if they are a dirty Italian.
Hey,
Sorry.
the dirty Italians love bread and wine. That's what do we do? Why they don't
that's
like
why
the
they make the
whale?
best of food.
Yep.
I mean, a dude named Martini who owns a bar, it's pretty cool.
I mean, he's just going into the family business.
Oh,
That's
also,
the mafia.
Martini's his
Oh,
last
that's
name.
fair.
His first name is Giuseppe. He's Giuseppe Martini.
His wife is literally like 1/3 of his age.
Yeah, I mean, yes, he is ancient, and she is like in her 20s.
They have like a 3-year-old and he's like 64 years old.
Yes.
Well, I mean, I don't know. Working back then, it aged you quick. He's probably 35. He just looks 60.
I mean, yeah, because look at George Bailey, who looks conservatively 40 and is supposed to be like 23.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, so we cut to Potter's office where one of his assistants is like, hey, by the way, all these people own homes now and most of them used to pay you rent. So this is now cutting into your business. So he calls George Bailey in to be like, hey, what if you came and worked for me instead and we closed your business? And he's like, no. And then he says, are you willing to stay trapped in a life you hate playing nursemaid to garlic eaters? Which, first of all, garlic is delicious. Everyone should eat garlic.
You should.
It is not just an Italian thing. Secondly, I'm proud to be a garlic eater.
Well, back then, they considered it spicy.
It is still spicy, and spicy is good. Flavor is good.
They considered garlic spicy back in the day?
Raw garlic in large amounts can still be spicy, by the way.
Oh, yeah, sure. I mean, I've never had a garlic in large enough quantities for it to be spicy like I would describe as spicy. So it's interesting that that's like a thing you would say that, too.
Yeah, it's not the same as like a chili pepper. Like it's got a different, it's almost like it's sharp as opposed to spicy, I guess.
Yeah, I am now wondering about spicy obviously comes from the word spice, which I would throw every type of flavor profile into a spice, right? But I only use spicy for things that are hot, like peppers, things like that you mentioned. So it's interesting if that's just the way Americans use it or if that's an evolution of that word over time. I just wonder about that kind of shit.
Maybe. I know my grandmother used to eat raw garlic all the time.
Just from the clove?
Oh, yeah. She would also drink
Oof.
vinegar. Yeah.
Oof. Okay,
But
cool.
she also was rarely sick, and that woman lived to be straight up 90.
And vampires never killed her.
Vampires never killed her, not even in the old country.
Because if you eat garlic, even your farts are poisonous to vampires.
Oh, yeah. You will fart your partner out of the room. My grandmother also believed that if you had warts, you would cut a potato in half, rub it on your warts, and then bury it in the garden, and your warts would go away. And we thought it was real stupid until my mom had this wart that would not go away, and my grandmother made her put a potato on it, and then lo and behold, that wart went away. We don't really know how it works.
Just like Windex, that's how it works.
Yes, I don't know, something about onions on your feet. It's a whole thing. I don't even know. Anyway, so he's like, no, I won't work for you, but I am taking that cigar. And so...
Oh, by the way, he offers him $20,000 a year in that scene.
Correct, yeah.
Do you know how much that is now?
$400,000.
Okay.
Yeah, that's about where I would put it, is $400,000.
Yeah, so it's $458,000 a year.
Yeah, it's crazy. Because he's making $45 a week.
Yeah.
Wild.
That's a lot to turn down.
That's a lot to turn down. He comes back to his house where she has the framed Lasso the Moon drawing, and he climbs into bed with her. And there's a couple bad cuts here because of how you're allowed to show.
Because there's a full-on sex scene that they cut out.
That'd be great. But no, it's because you're only of what you're allowed to show of men and women in bed together, even though they are married. It's very rare to see men and women in the same bed at this time on film.
That's wild just because of what we see now in film, but like,
Yeah.
you can very clearly see the cuts that they didn't want to do.
Right.
Because they're cuts that stand out and you're like, oh, that's weird.
Yeah.
And I can tell you what it is. They're not moving far enough
Yeah.
down like the 365-degree angle. I think it's like 35 degrees.
Yeah, along the 180 axis.
If you move 35 degrees or more, it's fine.
Right.
But if you move less than that or just zoom in slightly or stuff like that,
Yeah.
it bothers the brain a little bit. And you can see
Yep.
those shots in this.
Absolutely. And they have a really cute conversation here of like, why did you marry me? To keep you from being an old maid. And I didn't want to marry anybody else. I want my baby to look like you. And this is where we find out that she is pregnant.
Yeah.
And we find out that she then has 4 more children. They have 2 children. Then World War II happens and she has 2 more children and runs the USO. And his mother and her mother start sewing for the Red Cross. And George is disqualified from the draft because of his age, which is funny because he's only in his mid-20s.
Oh, I thought it was because of his ear.
Oh, his ear. That makes way more sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's his ear. He can't hear out of one ear.
So they say in it, they're like disqualified because of age. He was 4F because of age. And I was like, he was like 25.
Oh,
Like,
I
what
thought
are
it
we
was because
doing?
of his ear. Yeah,
The
he's
ear
way
makes
too young.
perfect sense.
He's
Yeah,
way too young to not be eligible. Like,
but no, the ear is definitely like that would be what it was.
Yeah.
100%.
They say it.
No. They said 4F because of age. So unless they say it later, but that would make more sense because I wrote down here I was like, age? What? Like why?
yeah, it's so weird.
It's weird.
But his brother goes and becomes like a literal World War II ace.
Yes.
Like shoots down 15 planes or whatever.
Yeah, they're like, 15? That's a lot.
That is a lot. Like he would be one of the top aces in the U.S. military. This is before we had an actual Air Force. Everything was
Yeah.
Army.
Well, and this is the part of the movie where we get a montage of like, and this character did this, and you're like, I don't know who that is, nor do
Yeah.
I care.
They
Yeah.
literally tell us like what the taxi driver did in the war.
Yeah.
And like he fought at the Battle of the Bulge and shit like that. And we're like, cool. I don't
Yeah.
know who he is.
Weird.
None of them died.
No, none of them died. You know what would be more accurate? Everyone but George Bailey dies
Yeah.
because he didn't go.
Right. Well, not in World War II. Vietnam, yes.
Yeah. That's probably more accurate. I guess we did do a little bit better in World War II.
Well, yeah, because
even
we only
World
came
War
in at
I,
the end.
only 25% of the people who went there died.
Yeah, and World War II was even less.
That's great. We still lost hundreds of thousands, right? It was a lot of people. But
Well-
percentage-wise, you're right. Like, I guess if they sent 5 people from a town, and I'm making this figure up, but 12% die, you might have those 5 people survive, you know?
Yeah, I was on a Reddit thread where historians were trying to do the math of survival statistics of people who joined up day one. What are their chances to make it through to do Armistice Day? And it was very interesting.
That would be interesting. I'm a nerd for shit like that, though.
I have some of it right here. So just
cool.
under 300,000 Americans died. So 298,000 Americans died. However, 4,200,000 Germans died because at the end, Hitler, running out of resources, caught in a land war in Siberia, he's just like throwing
people at the problem,
people at problems.
Which is why Russia had such high deaths as well. I think they had like 25 million.
The Japanese lost almost 2 million people, although a lot of that is the
Jeez.
bomb. Russia suffered the greatest total number of dead, about 18 million. Almost 6 million Polish people died, which was 20% of their entire population. So,
That's crazy.
yeah. So out of 70 million, like, who fought in the war, 300,000 Americans are lost. So, and America only joins in the last couple of years. So that means if you joined in America when we entered, your odds of survival were astronomically greater than they were for other countries and other places.
Yeah.
Anyway, turns out that Harry's going to get the Congressional Medal of Honor, and his mom has flown up to Washington to have lunch with the First Lady, and it is Christmas Eve. So we cut to the office where George has picked up a wreath, and it seems like business is going well because they have a bunch of those houses, and the bank examiner's there.
Yeah.
Great. We cut to Uncle Billy at the bank, bumbling around, not paying attention. I don't know why they're letting him handle money. He has animal friends and no sense of reality.
He thinks he's a Disney princess. Like, that is his level of intellect.
Yeah.
His best friends are animals. Do not give this man $8,000 in cash.
Which at the time was approximately $200,000.
It's a lot.
I can give you the exact because you're
Very close.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely the ballpark. It's $183,000, Paige.
Okay.
So yeah, you're like definitely in the ballpark of $200,000
Right.
that this dude is walking over in his Disney princess haze.
Yes.
And like back then, you had to like carry the actual money to the bank where it actually stayed in the bank and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so he tries to brag to Potter about Harry winning the Medal of Honor and leaves that envelope of cash in the newspaper, which I hope that at some point they find out that Potter's the one who had the cash and turn him into the police or something, because like he essentially like steals that money.
He does.
In a way. Like, you know, he knows who it belongs to.
We don't ever see the end result of that, right? Like, obviously, it focuses on something else, but I really do want Drew Barrymore's granddad to have some sort of blowback for this, right? Like, he just stole $8,000. Dude's already rich. Like, we should kill him. I mean, maybe not that, but like, follow me on this. If it worked for Caesar to kill like other wealthy people and then redistribute that wealth to the masses.
Well, do you remember what happened to Caesar, though?
It didn't work
it didn't
well for
work out
Caesar.
great for Caesar.
Okay, some of the later Caesars fucked up. Okay, I'll be honest with you. First, not great.
No. The first
Caesar gets stabbed on the steps of the
brutally murdered.
But you cannot say it didn't go great for Augustus after a few years of turmoil, right?
You know, Augustus went okay.
Yeah.
Augustus went okay because he's the one who does the census.
Definitively the start of the decline of the Roman Empire.
Well, yes and no. It's the decline of the ancient Roman Empire, but the uptick of the Holy Roman Empire. Technically not actually related, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. And listen, all I'm saying is that like Elon Musk is worth like what, $100 and some billion?
Dead or alive.
Exactly. And if we just killed him, I think we could give everyone like $150 in the US.
But that's like if you did like, I'm going to kill Elon Musk, distribute his wealth, or put him in prison and distribute his wealth, and also be dictator of America.
Oh, I don't want to do any of that shit, though. Like, I don't want any responsibility.
Caesar had a definitive second step there that really changed the outcome.
That's when he crossed the Rubicon, yes.
Listen, I think he had some good ideas. I don't think he should have killed the rich people, maybe tax them more.
Kanye, I'm going to stop you right here. I actually don't know a ton about Caesar's social policies.
I actually do. It is fascinating.
He's kind of like Palpatine because he has the Senate, but they can't overrule him.
A little bit. He starts out a little bit better off because prior to Caesar, Rome was kind of like a warring state where its army was comprised of the nobility.
Yeah.
And they policed their own portions of the city. So people were just like dying in the streets. Not that they weren't dying in the streets later because it's Rome, but he does bring about some reforms that pull power away from the financial elite and equalize it a little bit. That's part of why the financial elite don't like him and why they stab him.
When does Russell Crowe come in?
That is way towards the end of the emperors in Rome. Commodus is way towards the end. Either way, I don't even know how we got here. Hashtag fuck Potter. Let's move on.
No one is pro Potter, except for, I don't know, Pottersville did look super cool.
Pottersville looked like a more fun place to visit, not necessarily live.
Yeah.
Agreed. That's kind of like whenever I go to, we have these like real famous outdoor malls that the guy who built them tried to run for mayor and then lost. It's like a whole thing. Anyway, so like
Fairfield?
Caruso, but like
Yeah.
So these beautiful outdoor malls and they all have apartment buildings on top of them. And they're super expensive, like luxury apartments. But every time I go to those malls, I'm like, who would live here? Like, what kind of waking nightmare would it be to live on top of the busiest malls in Los Angeles? Like, what kind of noise? Are these like triple paned windows? Like, what is your life like if you live here? Like, how much do you pay to park at your own house? Like, it's just crazy. But I feel like that's what it would be like living in Pottersfield. You'd just be like, this used to be a nice neighborhood.
Yeah, you probably would be like that.
Yeah.
Whatever. I'm going down to the casino. Fun fact.
Uh-oh.
Inside the universal pocket that is Pottersville without George Bailey, that's actually where The Great Gatsby takes place.
Gatsby takes place in New York.
Where do you think Pottersville is?
It's in Bedford. Like, that's the whole point of them. It's here where we are with George Bailey.
But if you see he's going down Pottersville Main Street, you see a green light in the background.
Oh, I didn't because it was in black and white for me.
That's a very weird.
Like green light at the end of the dock?
No, I get it. But also, no, nothing was green for me. I refused to watch this in color. Anyway, so he can't find the money. He freaks out. He searches everywhere. He goes back. He tells George about it. Everyone's freaking out. The bank examiner is there to review the books, and they're just like, oh God, no. And as the bank examiner's there, he's like, George gives some money to Violet, who is going to New York, but it definitely seems just friendly. They're not having an affair or anything.
Yeah, we see them in his closed office together. She does kiss him on the cheek because she's in like a tight spot and he is loaning her money to help her out and get her out of town, right?
George has a hard time saying no to helping people.
Yeah, I think that's true. And but I agree with you, Paige. I don't think he's like hitting that. I think he's just helping that get out of town.
I think he's just helping her. But so this is where they're like, oh my God, we don't have that money. And for some reason, Uncle Billy has like, it's Uncle Billy, right?
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Uncle Baby Billy. He's got like a squirrel and elixirs and a giant bag of Funyuns. And at this point, George is like, one of us is going to fucking prison and it's going to be your ass. Like, I'm not doing it.
He is like yelling and shaking his uncle. It's like, honestly, not great, but I understand it.
Yes.
George is a good guy, but he's,
he has his limits. He has his limits, guys.
His uncle did lose $8,000.
The equivalent of almost $200,000, guys.
I would be mad at the $8,000 now. I cannot fathom the amount of anger I would have for $200.
Mikey, if I gave you $200,000 of cash that the podcast made in this dream world where we make that much money, and you lost it,
not just like my payout, like, Michael, I need you to take this to the bank and deposit it in our business account.
This is company funds. Yeah, it's not like he stole your paycheck or something. That's a different issue. This is like company funds. Yeah, this is bad news, Bears.
I'd be like, I'm sorry, I had to stop and gloat at an elderly man.
That is essentially what Uncle Baby Bobby Billy does in this scene.
Yeah. You see this giant bag of Funyuns? You get there by being a winner. Anyway, he goes back to his house and his kids are being children. And he's just like, I can't fucking take it. Although I do love that the youngest one has a Santa mask on and is just growling. And I find that hilarious. There's no way that was written in. That kid, that's just what that kid was going to do that day.
And they captured that magic. I think that's Zuzu.
Yeah, no, Zuzu's the one that's upstairs.
That's right.
I have a fun fact about why her name is Zuzu. But
is it Susie?
It's Zuzu. Z-U-Z-U.
I believe it's probably Z-O-U-Z-O-U.
Oh, she's adopted from Whoville.
No, it's a kind of like a shortened French phrase that means beautiful, but that's not why she's named that. She's named after a popular ginger cookie.
Oh.
At the time. But I'll talk about it in fun facts.
I just looked it up and it is Z-U-Z-U, which is weird to me. Because, and I'll say this, I don't know how to spell anything. So when I said Z-U-C-U, I was like, cause maybe. And then when you spelled it, I was like, no, of course that's what it is.
Yeah, in my mind, I thought it was as in like Zooby Zooby Zoo, which is a song that gets popularized in the 60s. But anyway, so it's,
I know what you're talking
Zuzu
about.
Ginger Biscuits. Yeah.
Yeah.
So no, this is not Zuzu. This is the baby of the family.
Yeah.
But it reminded me of, and I can't remember, is it Overboard where the one kid decides to talk like Pee Wee Herman the whole time? And that's just what that kid was doing.
Yes.
And they couldn't get him to stop doing it.
Yeah.
I think that's what's happening here with this child growling as Santa. Although I support a Santa that growls.
Same.
Anyway, George fucking loses it because it's like too much. And he's like, I hate this house. I hate these kids. I hate fucking everything. Like, I'm going to go to fucking prison. Like, I can't do this. And so he does go up to see Zuzu, who has a cold because she like walked home without her coat because she didn't want to crush a flower that she won at school. It's, it's a kid thing.
Yeah, she's doing a kid shit. Like, and I do love that George Bailey like calls and like reads the teacher the riot act for like,
yes,
he like way oversteps at this moment. It's so funny to me.
Well, and as he goes up and down the stairs, the finial on the banister comes off.
Yeah, you see him mess with it a few times throughout the movie. Actually, it's like
and that drives him nuts.
Yeah, it's like his I can't even get this house in order kind of like moment that we see a few times.
Right.
Yeah.
But yeah, he goes off on that teacher and then her husband, and he's like, "Oh, I wish you would come over here." And you're just like, "Calm down, man."
Yeah.
I do love how that pays off, though. Like the whole,
Yes.
he gets punched in martinis later because of it.
Yeah. So we cut to, he leaves and he goes to Potter and is like, I need $8,000 because Uncle Baby Billy's Funyun bag of tricks lost it. And Potter's just like, oh, so you misappropriated funds? I think I'll call the police about it.
Yeah.
Because he's an asshole. Even though he has the money, he knows he has the money.
Literally, if he called the police and the police weren't in his pocket and actually searched him and found the money, he'd be in a lot of trouble.
Yeah, probably.
But I mean, he's not going to be because he owns them, probably.
Right.
The one guy,
Yeah, the one policeman.
he's pretty Team Bailey.
Yeah. I mean, you're right. Maybe they do have a chance with the one police officer in town.
And then like the DA's like, this warrant?
Yeah, exactly. So we cut to Martini's, where George goes and gets overserved. And this is where he runs into the teacher's husband, who just like punches the shit out of him.
Lays him out. It's so great.
Yeah, but Martini is like, well, you're my friend. We'll kick that guy out. Are you okay? And he leaves and drives drunk into a tree.
And they show that accident, and I loved it.
Yep.
It's like a Model T car wreck. Like, how often do you see a Model T run into a tree?
Never. So he
great.
goes to the bridge where he's going to jump off to, allegedly, that's how he's going to, unfortunately, complete suicide. But Clarence comes and is just like, hold my beer. Yeah. An hour and a half into the movie.
We finally see Clarence.
Clarence. Then we cut to like the bridge office or whatever.
That is not what it's called, but also
Right.
is exactly
it
what
called?
it's called. I don't know. Like, I have no idea.
Is it a drawbridge?
No, it's just a bridge.
They had jobs for everything back there. What a good economy that was.
Well, I mean, we have, like, the Golden Gate Bridge has an office somewhere, I would assume.
And every day they're painting the Golden Gate Bridge.
Yes, they do.
I know.
It takes them almost a year to do it every
They
year.
have a whole staff that all they do is paint the Golden Gate Bridge.
But guys, this is not a big bridge.
This is the Golden Gate of Bedford Falls, and they have one guy who paints it all year, Mikey. It's not a whole
It's
team.
it's the same style of bridge, I will say, where it's
Yeah.
got the walkways on either side, and
I
then
don't
you
know,
can,
man. All of Bedford Falls look like gray, darkish.
It's because it was black and white. I mean, if you
Oh,
saw it
oh.
in color, yeah.
except there was this one green light that I forgot to mention.
Yeah.
It's at the end of the dock.
yeah, you get
Paige,
it.
it has to be like the bridge painting office or whatever, right? Like,
In my mind, I viewed Bedford Falls as kind of like Ossining in Mad Men. Did either of you watch Mad Men?
I did, but I don't even know what word you just used.
The suburbs. Ossining
Okay.
is the suburb where
Okay, yes.
Betty and the kids live.
I get it.
Um,
And yes, it does have that vibe.
Yes, and as he takes the train into New York, it goes over like a bridge over a lake or a river or something.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I pictured it as.
Yeah.
Anyway, so they're in the bridge office, and the bridge worker guy, I don't know, he's like, this guy's an angel, clearly. And he just bails out. He's just like, I'm gone.
Yeah.
And immediately believes Clarence when Clarence is like, I'm an angel, second class. This scene between Clarence and George goes on 4 times longer than it needs to be because they just talk in circles.
Yeah. Have you ever talked to an angel that's like childlike in nature, Paige?
I mean, I've talked to people who have believed they are angels, and you do circle back around quite often.
You sort of have to live in that delusion with them, right?
Sure. You're like, but if you're an angel, where are all of your eyes?
The emotions that come with the delusion are real. So you reflect the emotions. We don't have to get into it, but you have to be a patient talker.
I'm not. Anyway. So he tries to talk George out of completing suicide, and he does, because George at this point is like, you're right, I was not thinking clearly, there's got to be an answer or whatever. And he's like, well, why would you think that this was the answer anyway? He's like, because my life insurance policy is worth $15,000, which, so basically, like, insurance fraud could at least save my family, I think is what he's thinking.
Well, I mean, it wouldn't be fraud because he actually would have taken his own life, but I understand what you're saying.
Except
Yeah.
that most insurance policies exclude suicide.
That's true. And if they spun it as he slipped in and drowned,
Right,
obviously
right.
that would be covered. And I think maybe that's why he was trying to do it that way, although we don't really go into
Yeah.
it. Who knows?
Some of those provisions weren't, I mean...
That's true. It might have not been the thing at the time, which is why Belle Gunness got away with murdering people for so long, because triflers need not apply.
All right.
She killed like 20 husbands, essentially, and then just constantly cashed in their insurance policies.
That's terrible.
Is it, or is it girl bossing to the max?
It's
You
murder,
have a
Paige.
weird fascination with murderers, and it's honestly at this point a problem.
Deal with it. Anyways,
She's like your Tina Fey, and that concerns me.
no, she never wrote anything as amazing as Werewolf Bar Mitzvah.
Spooky, scary.
So at this point, George is like, I wish I had never been born. It feels like I cause problems, which I feel like is something, if you talk to people who are having suicidal ideations, I feel like that's very common
Oh, yeah.
to hear.
Yeah.
And you have to kind of be like, no, that's not true. These people love you. But it's not always like, sometimes it's chemicals making people believe that. So,
Yeah.
like, anyway, all this to say, the world is not better off without you. You are loved, you are listened to, and you are a part of this horror virgin community. I'm kidding. Anyway, so he's like, well, what if you had never been born? I'm going to show you that, essentially.
He's like, I gotta talk to my boss first to make sure I can do it. Like, I need him to authorize.
I got to get this approved from legal
Yeah.
upstairs, but if we can get it approved, you're going to love it. You're going to love seeing what it's like.
The coupon is expired, but like she's here. So
I hated retail so much.
sucked. Anyway, he proceeds to show him what would happen if he was not born. So first they go to Martini's, which is actually now Nick's. It's not Martini's because Martini, I think, never established the financial stability to open Martini's because he did not own a home.
I mean, yeah, we never really even see Martini. It's like Martini doesn't exist because George Bailey didn't exist to provide the resources for him to pick himself up by his bootstraps.
Yeah, or whatever.
Which is the point they're trying to make. But Nick
Right.
is the guy running the bar, which he is also the bartender there. So I think that George assumes initially that he's just like working that shift because he's, he did
Right.
work there before.
Right,
And
right.
then it becomes clear that Nick owns the place as he like gets more and more like, what are you guys talking? Just leave. Like I hate
bye.
both of your energies. Get out. Like he kicks them
Yes.
both out. Yeah.
Well, and he kicks Mr. Gower out, which at this point I was like, how is Mr. Gower still alive? Like, he was old 20 years ago.
And Mr. Gower is
a panhandler.
yeah, he's like a panhandler.
Well, and he had spent 20 years in jail for poisoning that family.
Yes,
and
that's
that
what
kid.
I was trying to tie back into. Yeah, because George wasn't there to stop him from killing that family with the poison.
Right. So next, he's trying to explain to him, like, hey, there is no you. You were never born. So your kids aren't born. Like, all this other stuff doesn't happen. You get to see what the world is like without you. And so this is where he goes to Pottersville, where it's all flashy lights and bars and dance clubs. And they're throwing a drunk Violet out of a bar, like, violently onto the street.
Yeah, she's having a rough
This
night.
is terrible. This is a terrible place.
Not a place I'd want to live. Anyway.
No.
I'd go visit. I mean, who wants to live in Vegas? But I'd go visit Vegas.
Honestly, though, if you live off this, like,
No, I mean like
not-
the strip. Yeah,
Yeah, no, never.
Yeah, but if you live off the Pottersville Strip, it's like pretty good.
I mean, you could get some affordable ass housing in Vegas,
of
but
course you can. It's Vegas.
yeah, you gotta live basically A, close to Vegas, and B, in the desert.
Yeah.
But some people love the desert. Some people are real desert people.
It's a
so
dry,
what
high
else?
heat.
Dry high heat. That's why people live in Palm Springs.
Yeah.
Honestly, I'd rather live in Palm Springs than Vegas, personally. But that's just me.
Same.
Anyway, he goes to the taxi guy and he's like, taxi friend, take me home. And the taxi friend's like, I've never seen you before in my life. And my wife left me 3 years ago and took the children. And now I live in a shack. And you're just like, jeez.
You overshare way too fast.
Look, I know you have tiny water bottles. This is not good conversation. I'm still going to rate you 5 stars because I'm not a monster, but
Right?
dial it back.
Yeah.
Anyway, the house is still old and decrepit. Nobody fixed it up. There's no Mary. There's no kids. Everything is burned down. At which point I realized that the taxi driver and the police officer are Bert and Ernie.
Yes.
Yeah.
I didn't realize to the point, and Sesame Street is not around at this time, so they
No.
must have named Bert and Ernie after this Bert and Ernie.
I assume so, or it's a coincidence, but this definitely predates Sesame Street, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Anyway, at this point, they try to tackle them.
Would you live at Sesame Street?
Hell yes. Are you kidding me?
That's a pretty Pottersville energy with like these big
No.
animals screwing stuff up all the time.
Yeah, but it's just a nice row of brownstones.
In my mind, it would be way more like Avenue Q than Sesame Street. And then, yes, I would. If we all had to like watch what we say and if every meal was sponsored by the number whatever, like that would get annoying after a while. But if you're singing about what the fuck do I do with a BA in English, like that sounds amazing.
I'm thinking of it as I'm a real person and the rest of the world is just puppets. Like I'm not bound by their rules. I'm just a person. And I'm like, this beautiful brownstone was so affordable and I can walk to the bodega right over there. This is great.
Yeah.
I just wish they'd clean these streets up because there's like green monster that lives in the trash cans.
Nobody is helping him. He needs services, Mikey.
Maybe he got offered services and turned them down.
Wow.
Because that's a real off to the grouch move.
It sounds like you're being the grouch right now, Mikey.
Being realistic by a complicated problem.
Anyway, so they try to run from Bert and Ernie, and Clarence bites one of their hands and then disappears. George runs away. He goes to his mother's house, and his mother's just like, I don't know you. Like, get off my porch.
Yeah.
Because she doesn't know him. Then he tries to find Mary. Or no, he finds he asks about Uncle Billy. Uncle Billy's been in an institution.
Yeah.
Then he finds Mary, and she's like a spinster at 25, coming out of the library.
And they try their best to make her look 40 in this, but she looks like Donna Reed. She's gorgeous.
All they did was light her badly.
Yeah.
For the first time in this film.
Yeah.
It was dark out.
It was dark, and she wasn't wearing lipstick.
And they also put glasses on her. Like
They tried to, they did try to like.
it's the reverse She's All That
She's
moment,
all that.
really.
Yeah, they tried
How
to ugly
dare
her
she
up, but I was
wear
like,
a ponytail and glasses? Anyway, he tries to chase after her, and she runs away because that's fucking terrifying.
Yeah.
It's terrifying. If a man chased me down on the street and was like, but we've got kids, I'd be like, no, we fucking don't. Like, I think I would remember that. Like,
Yeah.
no.
You would.
Yeah. She faints. Clarence punches the cop and runs away. It's that same cop who gets punched twice, I think.
Yeah.
But George runs to the bridge and yells out for Clarence and basically says, give me back my wife and kids. Let me live again. The police pull up and they do recognize him and his mouth is bleeding. It's back to the way it was before.
Yeah. It's like he daydreamed everything from when Clarence jumped in and he saved him up till now.
Hey, double bourbons will do that to you.
Yeah, man. Mess you up.
Mess you up.
that's my go-to drink.
Yeah. He runs around screaming Merry Christmas. And I do love him running through like the town square.
Yes.
Just like haphazardly through the snow. It was pretty crazy. Goes home. And then he's like, oh, right. I'm going to prison for the $8,000. But like before that, let me hug my kids, essentially.
Right?
So as he's kind of hugging his kids and his wife, she's like, hold on. They're on their way. And Uncle Billy kind of ushers in the entire town. And they all give him money, in part because when the crash hit, he paid them out. And so it's kind of like their return on investment.
Yeah.
But at a certain point, I was like, it doesn't matter if he suddenly has new money to replace the $8K. It's still misappropriation of funds.
Yeah.
It's not misappropriation. He did lose it.
Yeah, it's not appropriate to lose it.
If George wasn't there, his brother would have been institutionalized. His uncle.
Oh,
Maybe
yeah.
have
Maybe that's where he should have been.
Another member.
Yes. Eustace. Eustace is his other employee. I don't know why he has him counting. Anyway, I did love that their former housekeeper is like, I was saving this money for a divorce just in case I ever got married.
Funny line.
And I was like, that's a woman who thinks ahead. And they get a wire from London for $25,000 advanced, essentially.
Yeah.
Hee-haw and Merry Christmas. And so now even the bank examiner gives them money, which seems like a conflict of interest. And then the DA tears up the warrant and Harry comes back because he's now a decorated war veteran, and they toast to George, and everyone is happy. And every time a bell rings, an angel gets his wings.
Yeah,
They find
George
the
is the
book.
richest man in town.
George is the richest man in town, and Clarence gets his wings.
And that's
the
the
movie.
They do kind of yada yada that happy ending, don't they?
Yeah, they
They're
do.
Like, they're like, we got to
it's-
wrap it up.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've spent 2 hours on nothing you care about, but how about 4 minutes on the thing you do care about?
It's like they like ran out of money and they were like, shit, we got to wrap it up by the Christmas tree and then get out of this bitch.
Yep.
So having seen this movie 1,000 times and having talked about it for about 3 hours, what do you guys think about It's a Wonderful Life?
I love it. I like it a lot.
I do think it is shot beautifully.
Yeah.
I won't be rushing to watch it again. It's not for me. But I understand why it's for other people. Mostly nostalgia.
Yeah, I think it is mostly nostalgia. At least that is my experience with it, because I sort of love it too, Mikey. But I do feel like it's because it's like a nostalgic thing for me. this is going to sound salacious, but it's not. I want to see like the unedited version of it, like the one that like the censors didn't approve.
Yeah.
Because I think it would have like fixed some of the, at least some of the weird like cuts that I don't like in this movie.
I wonder if they had to like add other stuff in.
Well, I mean more like the full scene of them in bed together. Like that's the stuff that probably was more romantic that was cut out because it was in the 40s, you know? And I would love to see that edit of this, but this is a movie that I watch once a year and that's it because it's a tradition. I don't really want to watch it outside of that, you know?
Yeah. I mean, it is a full 2 hours of like movie.
It is.
You know? It's kind of like I don't watch Lord of the Rings all that often because it's 3 hours of movie, you know? Like you got to pick your spots with it.
Absolutely. But Paige, do you have any fun facts for us?
Yes.
Well, hit us with your fun facts. Bailey, fun facts.
Oh, Bailey fun facts. Okay.
In 1947, an FBI analyst submitted, without comment, an addition to a memo on communist infiltration of the motion picture industry. And that comment basically was that this film's obvious attempt to discredit bankers is, quote, a common trick used by communists. So for a brief point in time, the McCarthy contingent of our government really hated this film.
I love that.
Which I find very funny.
Yeah.
I find it funny that it became a classic despite that, which is pretty fun. But a lot of things that McCarthyism hated became classics, which is great.
Yeah. When the like fascists hate something, it's probably something pretty cool.
Right? So according to the lore of this film, Clarence Oddbody, which by the way, yes, his last name is Oddbody.
Wow,
as
love
if he's
that.
just the worst James Bond villain. Clarence Oddbody was born in May of 1653.
Okay.
Anyway, for the scene that requires Mary to throw a rock through the window of the house, the director actually hired a marksman to shoot the window out on cue. But to everyone's amazement, she actually hit the window by herself first try.
She does.
Damn.
You see it in the scene. I was like,
Yes.
damn. I was going to ask how many times it took to hit that, but she did it the first time, you said?
First time.
That's
and she had played
great.
baseball in high school and had a strong throwing arm. So she did it herself. And it's in the movie.
Awesome. Good for her. That's dope.
Yep. As Uncle Billy leaves the Bailey home earlier in the film, he crashes into some trash cans. But actually, that's not what happened. He walked off stage and a crew member dropped a huge tray of props right after he went off screen. And Jimmy Stewart started laughing. And Thomas Mitchell, who played Uncle Billy, improvised, "I'm all right, I'm okay," off screen, but close enough to catch on the microphones. So Frank Capra decides to use that take in the final cut and then paid that stagehand a $10 bonus for improving the sound of the film.
Oh, that's awesome.
Like, you know, accidental Foley.
Yeah.
So
That's cool.
now, Jimmy Stewart was actually really nervous about the phone kiss scene because it was his first on-screen kiss since he had returned to Hollywood from the war because he went to war and then came back to acting.
Yeah.
However, they actually filmed the scene in one unrehearsed take for chemistry, and it worked so well that it was significantly cut down because censors deemed that it was too passionate of a kiss.
Wow.
Yeah.
Damn.
That's nuts. I want to see that kiss.
Same, because I love the kiss that's here. I mean, it is weird that he kisses around her whole face, but like, I'm down for a bigger one, I guess.
He's
but
got an intense look.
Apparently, you couldn't handle the full power of his kiss.
I guess
Because
not.
they had to cut it out.
Hey, you know what? There are some amazing movie kisses that live rent-free in my brain. And like, I'm always good to add to the Rolodex. But anyway, so films made prior to this movie used to use painted cornflakes for snow. But because the cornflakes were so loud as they would hit the ground, dialogue would have to be dubbed in later.
Yeah.
And Frank Capra wanted to record the sound live. So they had to come up with a new way to make snow. And the way that they did it was by using the material that's inside fire extinguishers.
Yeah, okay.
Plus soap and water. And then it was pumped at high pressure through a wind machine to create silent falling snow. And it took them 6,000 gallons of the new snow
Wow.
to do this film because they filmed it in July.
Oh my God. There's so much snow all over the ground in that town while he's running through it.
Yep.
That is nuts.
Yeah, the RKO Effects Department received a Class 3 Scientific or Technical Award from the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences. It's the precursor to the Oscars, essentially. I mean, it is an Oscar, basically. But for specifically the development of new film snow. Another thing to note as well, when the kids are on the shovels sledding, that's a soundstage.
Yeah.
That's what blows my mind about this. Like, that's the kind of stuff, like, whether you find this movie depressing or not, you have to kind of watch that and be like, holy shit, they built a stage with an ice rink and a pond and all of it for this one scene that is like 8 minutes long.
Yeah.
Irresponsible, honestly. But like, yeah. So the set for Bedford Falls, the entire city, was constructed in 2 months.
What?
And was one of the longest sets that had ever been made for an American movie. It actually covers 4 acres of one of RKO's ranches in Encino, because this is a thing that used to happen at the time, is they have these like movie ranches, much like the one we see in Nope.
Nope, yeah.
Nope was filmed on a movie ranch. And they would just build these cities, and then they could either leave them there and reuse them. So there's a few that have like ghost towns there.
Yeah.
Or they would just build stuff and then tear it down and build new stuff because they have all this space. In the 60s, the Manson family ends up living on a movie ranch. It's the Spawn Ranch. It's not this same one.
Right.
But it's in a very similar area. But that's how they're able, that's like their bunker, basically, is a movie ranch. But that's where they built this town. Over 4 acres. It included 75 stores, buildings, and businesses.
Jesus.
A main street, a factory district, the entire neighborhood residential area, and a slum apartment area. Main Street is about 300 yards long. So it's 3 whole city blocks. If you've ever been to Disneyland, their Main Street is shorter than the main street they built for this film.
Jeez, that's crazy.
Isn't that crazy? Like, I look at Disneyland Main Street and kind of the area around it. That is smaller than what they built for this movie.
Wow.
And that is wild to me.
Yeah.
Like, so the scene where Jimmy Stewart is running through the snow at the end is filmed in one of the hottest days of the year in July. It was so hot that they had to use way more snow to like keep it looking like snow, but also they had to give people full days off to recuperate after shooting because the heat was so bad.
Oh, wow. So he's like sweating, just running down in the snow.
Yes.
That's so funny.
Yep. Now, the one character who asks for $17.50 in the script originally it was just $17, and right before they started shooting, Frank Capra was like, "Say $17.50," kind of like they used to do for Stefan on Weekend Update, where you just change it at the last minute. So she says $17.50. Jimmy Stewart wasn't ready for it. That's why he like laughs and kisses her in the moment because he thinks it's really funny, and then they kept that take.
Oh, that's awesome.
This film is one of 5 times that Beulah Bondi played Jimmy Stewart's mother.
Wow.
She also plays his mother in Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, Of Human Hearts, Vivacious Lady, The Jimmy Stewart Show, and Identity Crisis. Or The Jimmy Stewart Show, Identity Crisis, and then this movie. So
wild. Okay,
apparently
cool.
People were just like, she hella looks like his mom, I guess. So now Frank Capra estimated that the shooting schedule for this film, even considering the heat and giving people full days off, would be shot within 90 days. He was exactly right to the day.
Wow.
So they threw an entire party just to celebrate that they were correct.
That's
which I think
awesome.
is pretty fun.
I mean, he was a known filmmaker at the time. Like, he had made a bunch of pictures during the war that were very successful.
Yes. Now, according to an interview later, that comes much later, but the name Zuzu comes from Zuzu Ginger Snaps. George actually makes a reference to this in the end of the movie when he says to Zuzu, "Hey, my little ginger snap." So like he calls it out in the movie.
Yeah, okay.
But it's just one of those things where like they don't really exist anymore. So it's a reference that's lost on us, kind of like the hee-haw.
Yeah.
Anyway, prior to the Los Angeles release of the movie, they actually put out a huge promotional campaign, including daily advertisements, both in newspaper and on the TV, which is one of the first times that had ever happened, because there weren't that many TVs in America yet. There are some, but it's not as widespread. But radio, they did daily radio announcements as well.
Interesting.
Basically promoting the idea that Jimmy Stewart should win an Oscar for the movie, and that the movie should win an Oscar for Best Picture. in Los Angeles, where people were actually voting on that. Then, because it came out in New York first, the New York Daily Times also writes an editorial about believing that Jimmy Stewart should win an Oscar for it. And they get nominated, but they do not win.
Yeah, they got nominated for 5 Oscars. We looked it up. But they got nominated for Best Picture, Best Actor for James Stewart, Best Director for Frank Capra, Best Sound, and Best Film Editing, but didn't win any.
Honestly, it's a shame that it was not for cinematography and lighting, because those are the ones that I'm like, it should win for that.
Yeah.
Like, this is beautiful. The film originally ended with Ode to Joy instead of Auld Lang Syne, and it was changed right at the end of production.
Really? Okay.
So literally like days before filming, they were like, it's a different song. Which means they had to change some of the audio for what the little girl is playing on the piano through most of the movie.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. In 2007, this was ranked as the number 20 greatest movie of all time by AFI. That list is a living list that is constantly updated.
Yeah.
So it will probably not be 20 forever, but as of 2007, it was. Now, this original story was actually based on, some people say it was based on a postcard. It's not. It's based on a short story that a husband and wife duo end up writing the bulk of the screenplay. But that story passes through several hands and several people who do rewrites, one of whom, he doesn't do a rewrite, but he does try to get involved as a producer, is Howard Hughes.
Really?
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, he was in the movie business. That makes sense, but like, that's cool.
Yep. So the husband and wife writing team were Francis Goodrich and Albert Hackett, and they hated Frank Capra, didn't like working with him. He continually rewrote their script the entire time. So they actually filed arbitration with the Writers Guild to have Capra's name taken off the script, but it actually remains on, but so do theirs. So if you look at the credits, there are multiple writers,
Yeah.
but it's because they fought in arbitration for it. This takes on a new name later on in movie history, where sometimes you will hear to people referring to it as Alan Smithying a project. And that's where the guild has determined that you cannot take your name off it, but you can change your name so that it's not attributed to you.
Yeah.
So sometimes people write things and they're like, I don't want my name attached to this. And so they Alan Smithy it, and Alan Smithy is the name that usually goes in.
Interesting.
But those are your fun facts.
Well, thank you for those fun facts. Let's talk a little bit about box office. Now, the box office for this is a little weird because it's a 1947 movie and they did not track that necessarily by weekend, right?
Right.
I do have like total numbers, but not weekend breakdown. But I do sort of have like a fun story to tell you about the box office and how this became a movie that everyone knows now. The initial budget for the movie was $2 million. Because of some trouble they had shooting, that budget sort of inflated to $3.1 million before they were done with it. But it only made about $3.3 million in the box office. So it barely makes, and in some articles online, you'll see it'll say like it didn't quite make its budget back in the theaters. Another movie that was out at the time about someone coming back from the war called The Best Years of Our Lives. That movie was in the theater at the same time and did much, much better than It's a Wonderful Life. And people were saying at the time that people went and saw that movie about a guy who went to war instead of this movie about a guy who didn't go to war, if that makes sense.
Right.
So it just didn't do well in the theater. And there was some fallout from that. Liberty Films, that was one of the producers of the film, had borrowed $1.5 million to make it. And because it didn't make its money back, they sort of folded and got bought by Paramount. And Capra only directed 5 films after this, none of which were at this level. So he sort of falls a little bit as a director because this movie doesn't do well in the theaters either. Now, in the 70s, actually it was in 1974, the movie entered public domain because someone at Paramount, I assume, forgot to renew the copyright for it. So TV stations could play this movie for free, and they did in mass. So that is how it became an industry standard Christmas movie, if you will. It didn't do well in theaters. It was just a free movie you could show in the 70s, so they would show it. And then that's when our parents sort of fell in love with it, and then they made us watch it growing up, Mikey, because they had to watch it growing up because it was on TV. And I think that that's super interesting that like because it was free, everyone watched it, and then they sort of fell in love with it after the fact. Yeah.
What other lost Christmas movies are out there?
I know, right? I would love to see the movies from this time that didn't break through.
Yeah.
Like, what were those movies like? But that's your box office. I realize it's not the normal thing we do, but it's a fun story. So, Mikey, do you want to hit him with that romance scale?
Yeah, romance scale is how romantic we found the film. Scale of 1 to 10. Hey.
2.
I was going to give it a 2 as well. It's not romantic. It's just not super romantic.
I'm going to give it a 4.
Okay.
That's our romance scale.
All right. So this week, Mikey, you made us watch It's a Wonderful Life. I guess it's my turn next week, right?
Yeah, it is your turn. Yeah.
Nice. Because I'm going to make you watch a movie that I think came out last year on Netflix. It was not a theatrical release.
Okay.
And I have only watched little bits of it as Natalie has watched it 5 or 6 times while doing Christmas stuff around the house.
Okay.
And it stars Carrie Elwes and Brooke Shields in what is essentially a Lifetime movie called A Castle for Christmas.
I'm so excited you picked this because I was almost picked this instead of Preacher's Wife.
Oh, really? Okay, cool.
I'm excited about this.
I
I've
am
not
excited
seen it,
about
but
this.
I've heard good things.
I am here for Carrie Elwes in all his forms.
Same. And I will say this, Natalie loves this movie, but I read the description and I was like, okay, I have to know more about this. So I'm looking forward to reading it. The description is, to escape a scandal, a best-selling author journeys to Scotland, where she falls in love with a castle and faces off with the grumpy Duke who owns it.
Is this my future?
Because the Duke would have to murder 3 people for you to be super interested.
I mean, who were the people, though?
He threw children off the top of the castle. Oh, but his shoulders, though.
From all that child throwing. That's how you get those big shoulders.
His shoulders, though, is what her tombstone is going to say on it.
Oh, my God. What movie was that where she was like all over that murderer?
That was Silent Night, Deadly Night 2, dude.
Yes!
That was literally last Monday on Horror Virgin.
I like that you said which movie was it, and I was like, there's multiple.
There
Yeah,
are
I
multiple.
know.
Paige, there are a lot of movies in which you overlook murder for shoulders. So your homework for next week is to get wine drunk.
Get whiskey drunk.
Oh,
Okay.
okay. Yeah. So get drunk on some scotch and fall in love with a grumpy old Duke and his castle. Mm-hmm. And then check back next Thursday for that episode.
Yes.
So, Mikey, do you have a review for us to read?
I do.
Would you read the most recent
Yeah,
one, please?
I knew you would request that one.
Uh-huh.
This is from Raptor Myers.
Yeah.
Mikey is daddy, period, exclamation point.
That is the title of the review page. Mikey is daddy, period, exclamation point.
This is like when Trixie Mattel named a lipstick I'm Baby.
When I say period, they spelled out the word period and then put an exclamation point. Yes.
Love it.
Yeah.
I don't really watch rom-coms unless my boyfriend puts one on, but I'm listening to y'all go over the movie every week is such a delight.
Why, thank you so much, Raptor Myers.
Paige is very informative, Todd is Todd awesome, and Mikey is just so fine.
I really wish you could see the shade of red Mikey is turning right now. It's so
I hope
cute.
one day to see this magical vitamin water picture because I always get BDE from Mikey.
And Mikey, can you just let everyone know what BDE stands for if you don't mind?
Yeah, it means big dick energy.
That is what it
That's
means.
the kids
Yes.
are saying no cap.
Bad bitch, I could be your fantasy. I could show you about big dick energy.
Keep it up, y'all. Love you guys. Look forward to every week. 5 stars.
Well, Raptor Myers, I agree. Mikey is daddy, period. And I think it's about time he acknowledges that. You look like a tomato right now. It's so cute.
Oh, well, thank you.
And if you want to have Mikey blush at your review, leave us a 5-star review. So, yeah, guys, if you like this power throuple that we have here on this podcast, make sure to check out our other podcast, The Horror Virgin. And that is the only other podcast that Mikey and I are on. But Paige gets around, and she is on 2 other podcasts, Black Card Rehab and Cult Podcast. So guys, definitely check out those because they're amazing. If you want to follow us on social, we are at Romancing the Pod Show.
Yes.
On Instagram, and we are at something else on Twitter who I just have never taken the time to learn
It's just Romancing Pod Show because they have a character limit and it's show SHO like Showtime.
So guys, check that out as well. And if you want to follow us all individually, Paige is at Rampage Wesley everywhere, including TikTok. except for Twitter, where she is at Paige Wesley. Mikey is at mrandolph24, and I am at Todd J Awesome everywhere. And guys, we got a P.O. box. So if you want to send us some love letters or whatever you might send to a P.O. box, it's actually not a P.O. box. It's like a regular street address. It's pretty awesome. It's 6688 Nolensville Road, number 108-34, Brentwood, Tennessee 37027. So send us some stuff.
Yeah.
And that's going to be it for us, you guys. I'm Paige.
I'm Mikey.
And I'm Todd.
And you complete us.
Zuzu pedal pleation.
Merry Christmas.
Bye, ye old building and loan.